item is we have a new task force member, Scott Duvall. Welcome. You might want to give a little bit of background about yourself and your involvement in Bonita, and welcome.
Thank you. I'll be brief because my background's pretty brief. I've been in Southwest Florida for about 18 years. I'm an attorney here in Bonita. I'm also the first vice chair for the Bonita Chamber. I'm on the board of the Bonita Springs Assistance Office. I'm the executive elder of Table of Grace Church here in Bonita. The only thing I don't do in Bonita is live, and it's not for lack of trying. I've put offers on 4 homes, and I'm still trying. So, so thank you.
Thank you. Glad to have you on board. Public comment, and I would ask that if you have not signed in on the sign-in sheet in the back, please do. And at this time, if there are any members of the public that would like to make comments, please come forward.
Good afternoon. I don't mind starting it off. My name is David Depew. I'm here representing Bonita Grand Partners, which, as you may know, is the mine. There has been some discussion about whether or not the mine material is available for the task force. Let me assure you it is available for the task force. We're happy to provide any kind of cooperation and data that the task force might be interested in that we are in possession of, and would actually request that we be allowed to come and make a presentation to the task force at some point about what's going on at the mine, about the conditions at the mine as our analysis and our study related to the mine has revealed to us. It will take us probably 6 to 8 weeks to prepare something. So if the task force does indeed decide that they would like to hear from us, we would need probably not the next month, but the following month in terms of trying to schedule something like that before the task force. But I wanted to be here on behalf of the mine, the owners and the operators, and tell you all that we're more than happy to participate. We have been in attendance at these meetings and continue to plan on being in attendance at these meetings. And again, if the task force should desire that we make a presentation to them, we are ready to do so at your convenience. With that, I'll sit down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. How are you today?
Good.
Got a handout that I'd like to have you take a look at. And first, let me introduce myself. I'm Mark Generalis. Nothing special. Just want to give you a little bit of background so you'll understand that I hopefully come to you with a degree of credibility. I'm a former county commissioner, served for 8 years, and during my term in the county that I'm from, had the opportunity to help establish a critical lands program, stormwater utility. I chaired the finance committee for 8 years and got to deal specifically with school board millage and also the county costs and all of the things that are inherent in that. Obviously, all of those could be very contentious issues, and we certainly ran into an awful lot of times where we had tense times and difficult things to get through. What you have in front of you is a list of things that I think may be of help. And I come today not talking on one side or the other of the issue, but only in regards to the process, and hope that you might take what I've given you to heart. Because if you don't come through in a win-win way, as is listed here, we'll probably end up having a litigious situation and continued contention throughout the Bonita area. So walk through with me, if you would mind, the win-lose, and take a look at it and think back to your own experiences over time and see if this doesn't make sense. Almost always a win-lose solution is a temporary win. If we don't empathize with the other party's concerns, we're going to have a problem. Win-lose can swing back and forth between the winners and losers. It doesn't usually end up solving the problem. It's not beneficial in the end, and we usually end up in some form of challenge or litigation. Don't know about all of you and your business or personal experiences, but that has been mine, and it certainly was when I was in government. We've got to find a way to allow both sides to win. If we don't, we have an issue. When you do have both sides winning, the final resolution is long-term and it lasts. Walking out of here feeling really strongly about an issue and winning and not having the other side with you is going to be a loss. Ultimately, you have to listen to both sides. You got to understand each other. You need to build a consensus, not just one side winning. Look at the last couple on the sheet here. In the property entitlement realm, win-win usually involves public-private partnerships, and it's the best way to solve problems. In my county, we dealt with takings issues a lot. We had rezoned, we had new rules in place, a new comp plan, and all the things that went with it. If we hadn't taken the time that we did at my end to deal with folks and listen and try and make sure that everybody won, we were looking at a lot of court cases and a lot of public cost. I'd encourage all of you, take a look at your process and do what you can to make sure your resolution is a win-win. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to make comments at this time? Okay. Close the public comment and approval of minutes. John, you had some introductory comments?
Sorry about that sound. Yeah, just to put this next portion of the agenda in some context, I know there's been some ongoing discussion about the minutes and the nature of the minutes, and I've discussed this with our city attorney, and we just wanted to make sure that the group was comfortable with the fact that there are a couple of different things going on here. One is that while we do have written, or in this case, typed minutes, the official public record is still the audio tape that we keep. In this case, we'll have audio and video tape, so that if there's ever a dispute in the future by a member of the public or any need for clarification, that's what we would go to in order to produce a verbatim. So I just want you to be comfortable with the fact that the written minutes are not the end-all to that discussion. Written minutes typically are a reflection of some of the major touching points during the meeting. What we look for typically from the group is corrections, factual corrections. In other words, if we got somebody's name wrong or a date wrong or a measurement wrong or something like that, we would like to have factual corrections pointed out to us so that the record can reflect it. But it's typically not a discussion about what was in or left out of the minutes. You can supplement that if you like with notes or comments or however you want to characterize it, but just wanted to make sure that there was an understanding as to the role that's played by the different kinds of documentation, record keeping that we take.
And I believe at the last meeting, there was the possibility of having Fred's additional notes being something supplemental to the minutes, not necessarily voted on by the group, but something that he provides to the record as any of us could. Is that acceptable to the group? Fred?
Well, I have no problem with that, providing it's posted as like an attachment or an annex to the minutes. Because I think in that particular meeting, the things that I brought up that were omitted did not allow the minutes to really reflect the tone of the meeting, the tone of the chair, and a lot of other things that happened. And I'm sorry, but it seems like there's two different groups, and one group wants to have stuff on the record, but if we want something on the record, they don't want it on the record. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I would think it would be on the record because it's part of the agenda packet. So it's part of the record and it would be available online, correct, John? Okay.
Madam Chair. I had, and I don't know if it would be the right thing to do, I'd ask, well, since that meeting was very important, maybe it's the most important that we've had or will have because of the action taken and also the speakers, for that matter. Would it be logical for that one or some other important meeting to have a transcription of that in so that you have the verbatim in writing? Is that real expensive? I mean, it's something we could. because I think some of the things that Fred had mentioned, I reviewed the tape as well, and I heard a little different words.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think it's just a matter of what you want to emphasize, and I would see some other things that are very important that aren't in there, but hey, they're in the record, so I didn't want to bring it up, but.
Normally, and I don't do litigation, so I might rely on Scott, but I think our contracted rate is somewhere around $3. It might be more, might be a little less per page for a court reporter to go through and actually do a transcript. I don't know does that sound about right to you, or?
I just get the bill and sign the check. I don't even
I want
pay
to say it's
attention to
between
what it
$3 to
says.
$4.50 a page. A page is usually 5 or 10 5 minutes tops. Sometimes it's only a few seconds if you have a lot of people speaking. Each line has one person saying each sentence. It is costly. I mean, it could run a couple $1,000s. So I'd rather that money go for other uses, but
But again, beyond cost, obviously, if you direct us to do that, we will do that. I'm still concerned about what the value added would be to a written verbatim when we do have, in fact, an actual official public record, which is the audio and the visual and the video audio for.
I would prefer that we really just say, here's what generally was discussed, and then we have specific questions that those were identified questions and answers. But there was a lot of important things discussed. But Fred, one of the things was I went through just little things like where you said reverse osmosis is much more expensive. You didn't say much, and the Water Management District, they said more, but not much more. And it's little things like that say, well, nobody said much more. They said more. And then Fred Parton had said at the next meeting that it was not much more. So I'm just saying, that word kind of bugged me a little bit. And also when you said Mr. Waters responded on the small projects, he said yes. He didn't say yes. He said, I think so. And so it's not that big of a deal, but it's just, it implies to me that there's something you're trying to emphasize that maybe wasn't as strong in the meeting as what you would like it to be.
If you recall at the last meeting, I said anyone that wanted to review the tape and make amendments or changes to what I proposed, I didn't have a problem with it.
Okay. Well, I'd want to do that. I'm not prepared to do that, but I have notes, and I guess I'd need to put them to your notes and do it that
Okay.
way. But that's why I say it is what it is when you look at the tape.
Right.
Yeah. So,
I don't have any problem doing that.
Okay.
Maybe you can submit them to John and.
yeah. Okay.
And
I'll do that because I don't want to waste a lot of time. We've got a very important speaker
I don't
today,
either.
but like I say, I just think it was a very important meeting, and there was some critical things said and discussed, and also when I went back through, by the way, there were some questions that maybe weren't answered or weren't answered that well. And I think what I'd like to see is us have and this is kind of sidetracked, but have a kind of a parking lot of questions that we have for whoever's the best to answer them from the professionals or the organizations or the agencies. And then maybe a parking lot of possible recommendations, like what I brought up about the 29% water quality improvement. Maybe there's some parking lot things that we can say, we'll come back to those, but over time, we'll get the questions answered that we think would be out there, and then some ideas that we start a list for
And I
ideas
think
of recommendations. Yeah.
we'll be talking about that a
Okay.
little bit later in
So,
the agenda.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. I'll do some comments back, just what I think is maybe important as well, and maybe we can say, okay, let's attach that, like you say, whether we vote on it or not, it's just supplemental stuff.
So should we hold off on those minutes until we have the notes as attachments, or?
I would suggest that the group can still vote on the minutes, and then we'll just accept whatever notes follow. We have one set of notes, and if there are additional sets of notes, we'll just attach those as as notes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the February 3rd minutes with the understanding that we have the right to come up with our own individual corrections or revisions, which can be an annex or attachment or whatever you want.
I would be reluctant to categorize them as corrections or revisions. They would be notes. I mean, again, by saying corrections, if there are legitimate factual corrections, let's get those on the record, like the examples I gave, dates, people's names, things like that.
Well, I made all those things that I put in there. Now, Dennis may be correct in a couple points, but I went to the trouble to make recommended additions. All that stuff where Kevin Irwin, Nicole first, and then call him secondly, saying, Kevin Irwin is here. Do you want to ask him questions when everybody was being critical of him and saying, wish I could talk to him? And number one, they ignored Nicole. Number two, when Colum asked him, he said, well, you'll run us out of time. Now that's, to me, that's important.
It's important that that was at the 2-hour point of the meeting, which was a 2-hour meeting. That was when that was brought up, was when we were at 2 hours when we were supposed to be adjourning. That's why he said that.
But that would be part of your wanting that to be corrected in the minutes versus having that attached in your notes?
I thought that it was important enough that it needed to be added to the minutes. I mean, it's, you all do whatever you want. I've already made my point on it. If you want to make it an addendum, I would like to think that all of us have gone back and reviewed that tape. And all I'm saying is those minutes did not reflect neither the tone or a lot of comments like that that were made that I think are important.
May I say something?
Yes.
I understand your point, and I found a few points in the most recent minutes that I could bring up in the
Right.
same light. But I would like to say that this is the third meeting we've discussed this at, and I think that some of the suggestions that have been made in a way that we can move forward. I think we need to leave these minutes, and we're wasting time on accepting minutes or not accepting minutes. I think we need to move on to the points. I love this parking lot idea of questions that we feel maybe weren't answered sufficiently, and I respect the questions that you asked, but we can put that in a future way that we can deal with it rather than as a record, because we have all agreed that we have a permanent, factual, complete, visual record. So if these are just notes and minutes, let's move on, is my motion or request, because we've talked about this a long time.
Fred, would you maybe amend that just so that we do add these as notes?
Let's approve them, but are we saying that what I put in and whatever Dennis comes up
Right.
is going to be predominantly someplace close to where those minutes are, where people can see them if they want to look at them?
Well, they'll be in the record and in the agenda packets, and I think easy to pull up.
All right.
There are 2 or 3 name errors in here, either spelling or wrong people with names, so I don't know how you want to address that
But,
for the minutes, but
I'm more than willing to say that they need to be corrected. That was done. I would have to, well, I don't want to go into it.
But I thought we did that.
well,
a
we
couple
did,
meetings
except
ago.
when I
Did
went
we-
back through, I saw that, of course, you've got Roger Cobb spelled Cobb instead of Cop, but also,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, until I heard the tape, that on page 4, where it says Mr. Parton brought up, it was really Chairman Pass said Mr. Irwin was not a geologist, and I thought somebody said Parton wasn't a hydrogeologist, but it was, the message was from Pass that Mr. Irwin wasn't a geologist, and so that got, I don't know how that got mixed up like that, but, and then there was another one that was a name change. I think we might have picked up already.
Well,
Rick Lambert
Rick
versus
Lambert,
Barber. Yeah, okay, we got that
That's in
one.
a couple places.
And I think we
so.
had that done, okay.
And then I would ask that Fred would spell my name right.
Oh, okay. I would love to tell you what happened, but I would embarrass somebody else in the room if I did, so.
Okay, so we have a motion to,
To accept the minutes of the 3rd of February.
I second it.
And is that also to attach notes of?
Yeah, well, to have,
The notes, okay.
yeah, have a provision to attach
Okay.
both my notes and Dennis's notes, or
Yeah.
Tori's, or anybody's.
Whoever's, yeah, anyone's notes.
Okay.
okay.
That's good.
We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We got through the February minutes. Now, the March 3rd minutes.
I found a couple things. On page 2 of 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs down, the city takes the task of putting down what they want in it, and it's supposed to be, it is not supposed to be a complete record, not that it is supposed to be a complete record, the minutes.
Okay.
And then, 3 paragraphs down on page 4 of 9, some have nurseries. Is that nurseries? Some have trees. The dry side, some are deep, some are shallow, some have trees, some have nurseries, some have ponds. I didn't know what a nursery was. Page 4 of 9 of the minutes.
Right.
In the second paragraph down, and some wetlands are very wet, and some wetlands are on the dry side, some are deep, some are shallow, some have trees, and some have nurseries. I didn't know what a nursery was.
No trees.
Oh, no trees? Oh, I don't know what it is. I just thought it was curious.
No trees.
No trees, okay. Okay.
Follows from the preceding clause.
And then I just had a point whether this will be a note that I make, and that was when earlier Mr. Irwin had said that there's really no difference between the Lee County DRGR and the Bonita DRGR, and it came up later that he conceded that there was quite a difference in the two DRGRs. With Dennis had brought up the point of the density, and I thought that was an important point, but that's one of those, Fred, that I can add as a note.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Right, I'll add that as a note
Right.
to go in the packet or the record, so. I
I've
think
got a
that's-
question. Don't you want to record what the vote was of the approving the $4,000 additional for Kevin Irwin? It just says we voted. It didn't.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think that should be
The
added
vote.
in there.
What page?
My recollection,
It's on page 6, middle.
6.
my recollection was it was a 4-3 vote, I believe.
We can correct that.
No.
And then on page 5 of 9, on the very top, it says Bonita Grande, and a lot of water flows there, and they exceeded in getting that area, and I think it succeeded in getting that area.
I think we only had 6 people there, Brent, so it'd been 4-2, I think.
6.
Oh,
Yeah.
For them.
And also on the
yeah,
roll
you're
call
right.
for that, it says absent none, but Paul Pass was absent.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it shows Paul Pass is present.
Yeah.
And also, on the first page, public comment, the second paragraph, it was Brian Filson, not Jesse Purdon, who made that second comment. He lives at 28089 Vanderbilt Drive.
What page is that, I'm sorry?
That's on the first page.
First page?
There was one, too, that said that Nicole had, on page 4, Mr. Irwin stated the use of best modern technology. Vice Chair Johnson asked if the photos were taken the same month, different season, that was me, but I mean, so it's just, otherwise I'm good.
And also on page 8, the third paragraph, twice it has Roger Cobb, and it should be Cop.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 Ps?
2 Ps, yes.
So noted.
Okay, any other corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as corrected.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are passed. And now moving on to our presentation.
Good afternoon. My name's Matt Feeney. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Bonita Springs. I thought I would give you a presentation of how Public Works interacts in the world of water, namely in terms of water quantity and quality. So this opening slide, although not in the City of Bonita Springs, I think does a nice job of illustrating the two issues at hand that we deal with on a daily basis. In the foreground, you can see the algae in the water. That would be a quality issue. The structure that's holding it back is the Franklin Lock, which would be a flood control issue or a quantity issue. So those two issues are really what Public Works tries to address within the city, and this presentation is to show you how we try and do that. I thought I'd begin the basin that feeds a lot of the stormwater that we receive is the Corkscrew Basin. It's kind of illustrated here in this black and white picture. The darker areas are areas of lower elevation. This is Lake Trafford over here. So water kind of moves south to the Cocohatchee, but it also splits and moves in and feeds into the Imperial River, as well as moving up from a little bit north of us down and on into the Imperial River. So we're kind of at the bottom of that northern half of the basin. It was modified back in 1962. The Imperial River is, for the most part, natural, but east of 75, a portion was ditched, which is what we refer to as the Kiel Canal. Subsequently, a control structure, like a dam, was built, which is the Kiel Canal, which holds water back in this basin. And additionally, the construction, and I don't know if I have it quite right here, but the construction of Interstate 75 right in this area also helped to retard some of that water that was, traditionally sheet flowing across the area. Up here you can see this, you can go see this today. This is out on our Bonita Trail. These are the watermarks from the storms. Up here is the 1995 storm. Down in here is what we received back with Tropical Storm Faye, as well as just below it, the heavier stain is what we received this summer. So it gives you a good indication of what types of volumes of water that we're forced with dealing with here in Bonita. In addition, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but here's the Kiel Canal, and about this time last year, there's some freeboard on this weir structure. Here we are in high summer. There's about a foot and a half of water that's overtopped here. So it's a large volume of water. When this basin fills up, it's a large volume of water that moves down and into our river system. With that in mind, the city of Bonita Springs back in 2010, in an attempt to address some of the flooding issues that we've had, the city's worked on those quite a bit over the years, but commissioned a Stormwater Master Plan Phase 1. This plan used what's called an Interconnected Channel and Pond Routing Model, or ICPR. And what it did was it looked at all the elevations within the city through LIDAR, which is an airplane that flies over the terrain and shoots radar down and is able to get changes in elevation. So they mapped that, which is illustrated here in the blue, and created basins, how water moves within the city in a micro basin, if you will, and then identified ponds and stormwater piping as well as channels to figure out how that water moves. So we ended up with 582 basins within the city limits, and then the links, which would be the equivalent of your pipe or your stormwater channel, are considered links, and then the node is where that water collects before it gets into a link, like a pond or a swampland. So what you see here is, it's kind of hard to see, but the green dot would be your node. So the water moves out of this basin into this node, then it moves along this link and into the greater system as a whole, the river's down in here. So it gives you an idea how fast water can move within the city. It's a pretty comprehensive piece of engineering. It gives you a nice roadmap for how water moves within the city in the existing system. Once you know how water moves within the city, this plan was then able to model storms and calibrate those storms based on what we'd observed, such as the flood in 1995, the Tropical Storm Faye event in 2008. And you can model those storms, and they're defined by a period of frequency. It's not to say that every 25 years we get one of those storms. We can have 2 in 10 years and then not have any for a period of time. But it gives you an idea of the magnitude of the storm. So what we're looking at here is a modeling using how the water moves of the 100-year event. which amounts to about 13.7 inches in a 72-hour period. Up here you can see what the model predicts of the 5-year event, which is about 5.7 inches in a 24-hour period. So we're able to run several scenarios, and these are outlined within our stormwater master plan. And it gave us an idea of areas that we needed to address in terms of moving water. One of the big challenges is the basin is large from the earlier picture. So as that basin fills up, you can see it kind of reflected here. You get a large slug of water that comes down and into the city. So this gave us an understanding of how that water moves and where we could identify projects to make it convey faster. But there is a large order of magnitude when it comes to moving this water. So to that, there are several systems within the city. Some of those systems are maintained by the City Public Works Department. Some of those systems are maintained by outside agencies. The Kiel Canal, which is probably the largest and most influential piece of infrastructure that we have in terms of water for the city, is actually maintained by Lee County DOT. The operating schedule, which doesn't show up very well here, shows when the gates are released, at what elevation the gate is raised, given an amount of water behind the weir. And then, of course, when you get to a full flood position or condition, then you have the gates fully open. This is maintained through radio telemetry, so no one physically has to go out there and open the gates, although they can. It can be controlled from a computer desk, which is a great advantage when you think about all those systems county-wide. If you have to have 1 or 2 people that run out, or 10, it can take a lot of time in preparation for a storm event that doesn't take a lot of time to develop. In addition, there's some unique things here in Bonita. We have natural rivers, obviously with the Imperial, and flowways. This picture here is in dry season. Some of our water from Bonita Beach Road moves into what is called the Michigan Ditch. And it's a natural slough area. You can see it on older images. It's right in the heart of the city. But in high rain season, it conveys an incredible amount of water. So those things, it's important for us to understand what capacity we have there because they are a critical piece to our function. In addition, we also have the man-made stuff. The city maintains about every year close to $700,000 in expenditures for our MS4 infrastructure. That's what folks normally think of when you think about conveying stormwater. It would be your pipes, small weirs, catch basins, catch basin inlets, and we're required to inspect a certain percentage of that every year so that we know that it's in good operating order, clean it out, and maintain it so that it doesn't fail. So that keeps us busy pretty much nonstop. My maintenance coordinator is quite often heard saying we could reestablish every swale for the next 100 years and start over again and still not have the job complete. It's a large quantity of time and money. But it helps us convey water, and it also helps us treat water. Here we've poured some new end walls on these pipes, and we've also reestablished this swale here, which allows water to percolate into the ground and get some treatment. One of our big challenges, and you'll see in the following slides, is as land use changes, folks fertilize their lawns. It doesn't treat the water the same way, so the stormwater runoff ends up having a little bit of fertilizer in it, namely in the form of nitrogen, and that can be a trouble spot to get rid of. In addition to the typical MS4 structure, pipes and canals, we also maintain what people would think of as truly ditches. And our ditches here get overrun a lot by what is called a Category 1 invasive exotic. It's a type of plant that is able to take advantage of the environment here and dominate all the other native plant species. And one of the worst that we have for drainage is Brazilian pepper. You can see in this earlier picture, this ditch was completely choked with Brazilian pepper. Well, what's that have to do with moving water? It slows water down. The water has to move around every branch and every piece of the pepper. It also conveys the Brazilian pepper on further down into the system and perpetuates itself. So one of our challenges is to work through those ditches and clean them out. This is the same ditch. You can see the capacity here. And cut those trees out and kill them. Kill them with chemicals so that they won't come back. They still will come back, but they just won't come back as quickly. It's a never-ending battle with this. So we spend, last year we spent $67,000 cutting out Brazilian pepper out of flowways. And there's still more flowways that we have to cut Brazilian pepper out of. In addition, here we partnered with Lee County, and this is Lightner Creek. This is a sediment delta that's no longer there. Over time, as development changed the face of the land, we see that sediment comes into a natural flowway that also moves water and builds up sediment deltas. So you lose capacity. So we work to keep those areas clear of sediment, as well as just plain old debris, because that hangs things up too. Partnerships. I mentioned that native vegetation in our flowways can really cause us a lot of problems and can be a consistent problem. In addition to that, we don't own or maintain every flowway. Some of these flowways are privately maintained. In the area that you've been discussing, there are some chief canals here that are in private ownership. And unfortunately, they tend to wind up falling prey to overgrowth. And so back in 2010, we were fortunate enough to work in a partnership with the private property owners, as well as with grant funds from the South Florida Water Management District. We received $296,000 in grant funds, and we were able to clean those critical flowways. They're all highlighted here in red, but we were able to open them up significantly, which allows the water to move through in a flood condition. So, I mentioned nitrogen earlier. That's really how we handle water quantity. Water quality is another just as important facet of what we do. And in 2011, we engaged the same firm that had done the first portion of our quantity study to look at water quality. The reason is at the same time the state of Florida was looking at some monitoring data that they had for the Imperial River, and they were coming to the conclusion that there may be an issue with dissolved oxygen in our stream system. So we wanted to understand what types of projects and locations that we could do to improve water quality within the Imperial River Basin. Excuse me. So this study was identified to do just that, and it utilized two methodologies, not so much models, well, one's a model, but more so approaches in how to evaluate quantity of pollutant removal from the water system. So it looked at our watersheds and utilized the 2010 FDEP stormwater quality applicants methodology, which looks at an annual average rainfall of 52.5 inches per year. And that's an important difference between water quality and water quantity when you look to try and solve the problem. When we were looking at quantity, we studied how our system moved water, and then we looked at specific periods of storm events. When you look at quality, you're not so much focused on 10 inches of rain in 10 hours. You're looking at what the average is over time, because that's how the land puts a nutrient load within the watershed. So So 52 inches is the number we use when we're looking at quality. We also utilized a HSPF model, which used just a little different approach, but came basically the same results in terms of nutrient loading. This plan, the key piece to understanding nutrient loading is monitoring to know that you have a problem, but then to be able to figure out how to fix the problem, it really kind of hinges on a model. And the model focuses very much on what previous studies, scientific studies, have shown the land to load the watershed in terms of nutrients. A good example would be if we were fertilizing a farm field every year, right? We know that that's more fertilizer than if it was a timber forest. So that land use would then be given a number that we know it loads X amount of pounds of nitrogen more than a timber forest. So that's what's represented here. We grouped our basin up. You can see as you get into the urban areas, we load at a little higher level of milligrams per liter of nitrogen, and nitrogen is the chief pollutant that we're interested here in the Imperial River. But it gives you an idea that it's based on land use. Phase 2 looked at specific land uses and looked at how the water moved. I mentioned that the Phase 1 approach identified geographically where the water is and how it moves within the city. Well, Phase 2 capitalized upon that and then tried to look at the land uses within that watershed and then identify areas of either fallow property or preferably fallow publicly owned property that would be appropriate for doing a water quality project on. To strip the nitrogen out of the stormwater once it has nitrogen in it requires a little bit of land and some residency time for the water so that it can percolate down into the soil. So Phase 2 looked at that, and in addition, what also helps water percolate into the soil is what type of soil it is and whether it's impervious area that the rainfall's hitting onto and getting into a pipe system, or whether it's actually being able to travel over raw land. So just a little more detail in that modeling. These are really kind of the key things that you have to focus on. Not only how much rain you have, but what the land's going to do to the rain, and then how the rain's going to get into the ground, how quickly it's going to get into the ground. So Phase 2 gave us kind of a roadmap for some projects. Here's one that's down near the Bonita Trail area, which this project was to conceive to rehydrate an original fork of the Imperial River. We have not conducted that project. We're still in the process of evaluating which ones of these really make the biggest impact for the city. So I told you that the reason we followed into a Phase 2 assessment was we understood that the Imperial River was in trouble. And what it was identified as being in trouble for was dissolved oxygen. Monitoring over the years for the Department of Environmental Protection indicated that we had exceeded the threshold for dissolved oxygen. Furthermore, it concluded that the reason we had exceeded that is nitrogen within the water system. The idea being that you don't have enough oxygen in the river, and the reason you don't is algae and phytoplankton and other plant animals are consuming the oxygen because they're being fertilized. I mean, that's a bit of an oversimplification, but I think it explains it. The reason that's important is it gave us a goal to set for the pollutant, and it really identified what the cause of the problem is, which was identified as nitrogen, and we were given a goal back in August of 2008 to reduce our nitrogen loading to 0.74 milligrams per liter on average within the Imperial River. Currently, we're right around somewhere around a 1. So it's a bit of a game of inches, depending on your reference scale, but it's no small task. The way the loading was identified is a basin was drawn. I showed you a much larger basin in the beginning of this, but for the purposes of managing nitrogen within the Imperial River, this basin was drawn, which is really kind of the northern Lee County feed to the Imperial River. The different colors are different land use types. So this basin was modeled based on the existing land use types. I believe the 2004 Florida Land Use Code was used to model this. And really what it was done was it was compared to a model of previous pre-development land use. So there's an understanding of what rangeland or timberland or swampland would load the watershed at. And so this was evaluated and a determination was made prior to anybody being here. What was the land like? We know what that type of land loads the land with in terms of nitrogen. What do we think this model looked like? And it's hard for me to quite speculate, but we know this is swamp, right, of some form. We know at some point we're going to transition into upland timber, so that gives you an idea. So they evaluated what we think the land looked like and what it loaded before people were here, and we evaluated it how we know the land is loading based on land use currently. And we found a differential, and that differential results in your number for what we want to get to. And currently, what that equates to is a reduction of 60,000 pounds of nitrogen over this area. And the city of Bonita basically ends right down in here, right there. A reduction of 60,000 pounds of nitrogen per year forever. So the way these projects are identified when we go into designing a project is how many pounds of nitrogen per year forever will it remove. So it's modeled that way. It's kind of a quirky number to get your head around, but that's how this works, which results in about a 23.8% reduction overall in this whole area. I mentioned phase 2 was done kind of in preparation or in concurrence as this process was being developed. This process was finalized in November of 2012 with the adoption of a basin management action plan, which is a roadmap to get ourselves to 60,000 pound reduction. This is the basin, and the management plan exists. In it, I showed you that the city is a small component, but within it there are other partners. There is Lee County. There's also agriculture is culled out separately, so it's a separate partner. It's kind of handled in a little different manner. They maybe don't fall under the same mandate. It's more of a compliance type program with them. And then I mentioned I-75 runs through there, so FDOT's there. But the additional partners are small in relation to the city's allocation, other than the exception of agriculture itself. When you look at Lee County's amount of land, you also have to look at the land use that they use to figure out their loading. And that's where the city's number, I mentioned it's a 23.8% reduction overall. Well, for the city, it's really on order of a 26.5% reduction from our existing land use. The reason is different uses of land load the ground with different amounts of nitrogen. So that's how we have a little bit of a higher number here within the city. The basin is 44,960 acres. 7,154 of those acres are within Bonita Springs. And the reduction that we're required to remove from the system is 9,903 pounds. And that is over the next 15 years. So we're divided up into 3,000 plus or minus increments, 3 5-year periods. So it's not all at one shot. It's a flexible management plan, but what we're going to do is work to remove the 3,000 pounds for the first 5 years, evaluate where we are, see what the health of the river is, and then continue on. So there is flexibility built within this. This slide doesn't quite fit, but this just to give you an example of the size and scale of some of the capital improvement projects that we do for flood control. So I mentioned earlier that we handle maintenance. We handle maintenance of flowways. We haven't handled maintenance of our pipe systems. In addition, we also undertake capital improvement projects. This is a 60-inch pipe. If you'd like to see it, unfortunately you just missed it. It's going in along Shangri-La Road. We just finished installing all of the pipe, but it's a sizable pipe to handle stormwater. And the reason we're constructing that project is not really for the roadway. We don't need pipe that large for the roadway. It is a function of flooding that we experienced back in 2008 in that area, which was identified in our Phase 1 plan. So this is a plan being put into action. This is a very small project. This is along Pauley and McKenna Street, and we had, I believe it was 5 inches of rain in 2 hours this year. And we had a resident who was experiencing water coming up their yard fairly rapidly because it was a downpour. So this project provides connectivity to an existing swale system to move that water out of their front yard and alleviate the risk of flooding and move it on down to eventually to the Imperial River. In addition to capital improvements for flooding, we construct capital improvements for nitrogen removal. And the numbers may not have been so impressive, 9,000 pounds over 15 years. The catch is it's difficult to remove nitrogen out of the system. So it very much is a game of inches. I know I said that earlier, but it takes a lot of space currently. There are some low-impact development technologies that we're very interested in because it appears that there may be some more effective means to remove nitrogen. But the current conventional approach, and these are by no means conventional, even though they may look it, is to percolate water down into the ground. And you basically figure out the load of the water coming in and then how fast and how much you can percolate into the ground, so it takes some space. This is a very unique project here along Feltz Avenue that removes 258 pounds per year on average of nitrogen. It does two things. It pre-screens it here with this non-official looking box. It screens out all of the large debris, and it diverts it over into this pond. Actually, water comes out of that. That's not a drain. It's actually a feed. So the water comes from the box, out, and into this dry retention area where it can percolate into the ground. When we get a large rain event like 5 inches in 2 hours, that type of system isn't real beneficial for preventing flooding. So this system, when we get into that type of mode of operation, actually has a gate that lifts and allows the large volume of runoff to bypass and run down into the Imperial River as it always had previously in a ditch. And then as soon as we have lower volumes of rain, we're able to treat it over here.
So, excuse me, when you have to open that because of a flood, then you just let it go in dirty, basically?
Well, part of the thought is that it isn't quite dirty because of the amount of volume that's coming. You know, it's literally coming down and moving,
okay.
right? It's not giving a whole lot of time to pick up the dirt.
How large is that pond area, that system?
I would have to, I'd have to get you an accurate number, I'd have to get back to you. I want to say it's a little under an acre off the top of my head, but
Okay, yeah, just generally.
I don't want to give you a bad number.
I have one other question. Once it perks and it's a little bit cleaner, it goes down and then across underneath and what does it go down to?
It basically, and I mentioned some low-impact development ideas, and I don't want to talk ad nauseum about them, but the thought process is that as you get into the ground, there are naturally existing microbes and things in the soil itself that strip that nitrogen out of the water.
Right, but I mean, does it travel, does it then go into some pipes you have underneath, or does it naturally flow through the
it's
sand?
a natural at that point.
Just below the surface?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I know that out in where we live, our ponds rise when it rains, and then 3 days later, they're way higher, and that water doesn't come over the top. It comes
From groundwater?
from groundwater, and it flows under the surface. So that's, again, what this is doing, right? Some of it, after you.
Well, it's trying to percolate it down, or we're not trying to pick groundwater up.
No, I mean, it percolates down and then travels more towards the Gulf.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In addition, this picture didn't turn out so well, but these are cypress trees. And, we know there were cypress trees here before. And this is we don't have a number assigned to it because we don't have a way to assign a number yet. But this is kind of restoring the natural environment in a groomed system, if you will. That's a stormwater pond for a road. But we're kind of reestablishing the environment. Those trees will take up nutrients. They're living trees. Additionally, we do regulation. Public Works doesn't necessarily, we're not the regulators, if you will. We do, though, work in partnership with our code enforcement department and folks at community development in ensuring that the city has a fertilizer ordinance that requires folks that do apply fertilizer, licensed landscape contractors, to register, folks that sell it to post the regulations so that if you go to buy it at Home Depot or True Value, you understand what the rules are here in Bonita. And we also have a period of time when we require that you don't install fertilizer because it's adversarial to the environment. It's adversarial to you as a homeowner because it won't actually get to the plant material that you're trying to fertilize. It'll just run off and into our water column, and one of our projects will have to remove it. So we try to head those type of things off at the source where we can through regulation. We also inspect sites, not so much for nutrient runoff. That's a hard thing to be able to physically see. But we do look for things like turbidity coming off of heavy construction sites that disturb the earth. Things as simple as folks mowing landscape medians and not picking up the leaf clippings. Those leaf clippings, as they break down, can contribute to our nitrogen issue that we have with the Imperial River. Additionally, here's kind of a unique piece of technology. This was right near the boat ramp here off of US 41, where a site development project was coming in. A large amount of water flowed through that area, and this is a water-filled bag that prevented any sort of disturbed water looking like this from making its way into the Imperial River so close. And we worked with the folks that ultimately put that up to make sure that the Imperial was not hit with turbidity. We also, and this is a relatively new program as of probably the last year and a half, we have aggressively undertaken education and outreach. We've partnered with folks from the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program, Hyacinth Control, Lee County Natural Resources. We hosted one here, workshop back February 21st. Before that, my folks that work for me were up in Lee County on February 14th giving classes to communities, folks that live in communities that have stormwater ponds, folks that manage those communities, folks that design those communities, to understand the fertilizer pieces and understand how maybe you can design that pond or maintain it or plant it with native vegetation that will benefit the environment and also benefit the community environment itself. So kind of a win-win-win and costs less money. We've also conducted Florida Yards and Neighbor Friendly workshops here at City Hall, which encourage the use of native plants, which thereby require less fertilizer within the system. We were out at Arbor Day talking about rain barrels. So we're trying to get the word out to folks, and we get some credits for this within the basin for nitrogen reduction, but really we're trying to get the word out to folks that if you don't overdo it in the beginning, it's a whole lot easier in the end for us and for everyone living here. If you over-fertilize and it's unnecessary, it becomes a pollutant, and it becomes a pollutant that is very expensive and very difficult for the city to get out of its water supply. So we try to bring folks along to stop it at the source when possible. We also, I'd be remiss, we do train folks how to inspect construction sites. We were up in, actually we were even outside of the community in Bradenton giving some classes to their public works department on how to carry out an effective inspection program that keeps the maintenance low on the MS4 system and keeps pollution low from construction sites into your natural bodies of water. So, future efforts. We're really excited about something that is currently ongoing. We got a lot of valuable information from our 2 stormwater studies. And probably the biggest piece was those 523 basins. That's an incredible piece of information to have, to know how water moves at that level of detail within your community. And instead of just looking at a couple of flood maps that show how it works in a 100-year storm and a 25-year storm and shelving it, we have that data electronically, and we've kind of resurrected it to utilize it in the piece of water quality, because what it gives you is how water moves within a very small neighborhood. And we know the land use within that very small neighborhood. And so it gives you what the load would be at any point within your system in that small neighborhood, which then allows you to figure out whether a new swale or something like a nutrient separation box would be of value to put within that neighborhood, whether the city has the land or whether it would be worthwhile based on the amount of pollutant modeled coming in there, whether the city should acquire some land or partner with someone. It gives you that kind of micro level of detail or community level of detail to make rational decisions on how to handle this issue. It's in development. We're not 100% there, but that's the idea, and we're really excited about that. In addition, we continue to do system improvements and maintenance. This here is a swale restoration project that we conducted last year, and basically prior to this project, we had no real treatment. We had no real swale system. The water didn't really move effectively through that area. We regraded the swale, which gives you volumetric movement, but it also gives you a more conducive environment to treat what's in the water. So we continue to work on those things. Do you have any questions?
Thank you,
What's
Matt.
the
Questions?
name of our basin here?
Speak into the mic.
Yeah, I was asking, what's the name of our basin? It's
For water quality purposes, it's the Imperial River Basin.
Imperial River Basin. Yeah.
Matt, you had mentioned the 45,000 acres that's in that basin that Colin mentioned is for water quality and it's the impaired water imperial basin. The drainage flood basin we've talked about, I don't know if your plan, but the previous discussions were on a 315 thousand acre, I think, or square mile. Let's see, square mile. So how is your drainage study on that same basis of that larger flood area or the watershed area? I guess I'm saying. Is it consistent with it, or how do you?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that map. Mm-hmm.
What you have here is, I believe, is the 315-mile basin that you're referring to. It runs out to Lake Trafford. We know that a portion of water obviously moves south into the Cocohatchee system. So when folks were looking at the water quality piece of the basin, the one that was defined, even though quantity may at times move through from a much larger basin, the piece in terms of water quality was kind of defined. It's hard to see. I should have overlaid it, but it kind of runs here from north into Lee County and down. It doesn't cross over into this greater area. And this greater area, some of that water moves south. It depends on the conditions within that basin. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks.
Matt, in the one slide you mentioned that there were some grants that South Florida Water Management District provided for the private people who own some conveyances on private lands to clean them up. Is there an enforcement mechanism to make sure that those stay cleaned up, or the people who have private lands that aren't cleaned up get cleaned up? Is that code enforcement's job, or?
I would defer to the district. They do. I know they have some enforcement capability. Obviously it's better to gain compliance, through compliance.
Right. I mean, you keep throwing money at them, they're going to say, "Where's my money this time?"
I don't know the answer. I know the broad brushstroke. The district and has some enforcement capability, but I need them to flesh that out for you.
Management's here. We asked Water Management, they're here.
Maybe have Water Management answer that after Matt's finished.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's a good idea. Fred?
Yeah, I've got several questions. By any chance, were you here during the 2005 flood?
I was here, but I was dealing probably with Hurricane Wilma on Fort Myers Beach. And unfortunately, I'm from here, but I'm from Fort Myers, and I didn't come down to Bonita during that event.
The study, the 2010 study for the city, how much of what was done in the southern Lee County watershed study was included in that, and are you allowing that study to look at the larger area of the watershed to really capture all the water that flows in here? Or do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I think you'd have to talk to the folks that developed the South Lee County piece, and maybe they could speak to, how or whether they incorporated this information.
Okay.
That may be a question for the district also. The district, I understand, funded or partially funded the 2010 study.
Yes.
So and then they, of course, adopted the 09 study. So.
Yes, and they provided a lion's share of funding for the Phase 1 study as well.
Based on do you actually run that model, or does somebody else run it?
That would have been the consultant in Terra that designed that model for us.
Okay. Is the city pretty aggressively pursuing the funding and the projects, especially those that would give immediate relief out to what's called east of Bonita, in and around the DRGR?
We pursue funding whenever it's available. Unfortunately, I showed you the district gave us significant funding back in 2010. The economy, although picking up now, didn't make those opportunities available in recent times. Hopefully, they'll come back.
All right. So what do you, if we had a big storm come in again, like the one in '05 or worse, do you think we would get flooding again? Based on what your knowledge is?
It'd depend on what kind of big storm. And it'd depend on what the conditions in that basin are to the east. You know, how much capacity it has. I can tell you this year, you know, until this fills up, you're storing water back to the east. As soon as this filled up, and I think Mr. Hasty can attest to this, it didn't matter whether it was a small amount of rain or a large amount. It instantaneously moves down the river because the weir's overtopped.
Right.
There is no capacity to store it.
And just for information, the rankings of rain we've had around here since 92 was extremely high. 95 was the big one everybody knows about, but I think 92 might have been just as high. Then the next really big one was '08. And '08 was quite high. It was within about, I think it was within about 14 inches of what we had in 95. That's in our general area here, in our DRGR. Those are the big ones, 92, 95, and 2000.
On the Kiel Canal, it's operated by the Lee DOT, and you have the berm and you have the movable parts of it. I'm sorry, the weir and the movable parts of it, the gates. Is there who's responsible to say, okay, that's a spillover? What happens around? You know, we got Beach Road, you got Bonita Grand, you got berms and all, you know, in different areas. Is that something that's maintained to where you say we know the canal? I mean, the keel structure is working because it's containing. I mean, how's it contained within that? Or does it find ways to get through without that structure, I'm saying?
I mean, we don't maintain any system. There is no greater, like if this was an impoundment or something, you know, there is no mechanism to my knowledge that maintains some form of an impoundment or lack thereof.
Right, because when it does go too high, it just starts running across the south end of Bonita Grande or...
All bets are off once it gets to a certain
level. It finds its own little ways each and every way. I have a question. I haven't looked at it for a number of years, but a few years ago, it was all backing up, and I guess the Kiel Canal was holding at that point, and the water was actually traveling north and east of Bonita Grande at one point, and I found on Wonder Maps you can actually look and see each of the how much water is flowing through each of the rivers. And the Imperial River was like pounds per square, or how they measure
CFS,
it.
cubic feet per
cubic
second. Yeah.
was in the hundreds. And the other ones were way, way down. And I mean, it's like all going into the Imperial. Spring Creek and all the other creeks. You can actually see that just by going on Wonder Maps at any point when you want. And when the water really starts to pour, it's a tiny percentage that goes anywhere other than the Kiel Canal.
I mean,
and do you maintain those other? I mean, Spring Creek and all those are still within your.
They're within the city boundaries. How much they're maintained, you know, natural watersheds tend to kind of be natural watersheds. Of course, we keep an eye out for snags or something that would completely block flow in a scenario as you speak of, but they're not. You know, I showed you some conveyances or man-made channels that we try to keep pepper out of or clear it periodically. I mean, a man-made or a natural system is not typically managed like that.
Okay, so
there's no mechanism to manage it like that.
So it's managed as a natural system in Bonita, not artificially putting some into Spring Creek and some into, okay.
I have a question. I keep meaning to ask this, and I keep forgetting to over the years, but does anybody know who is Kiel?
I could tell you a story, but I don't know. No,
I do know that I looked into, when I first moved here, I tried to find out some things about the Kiel Canal and found out there were no permits, the Corps of Engineers had no record of it, and that it was dug by Suncoast Acres Estates as a part of their sales tool. But I never heard who Kiel was. If anybody knows, please let me know. Do you know, Alex?
Stalnacher Realty, her husband was the guy that built Kiel Canal.
But where'd the name come from, the Kiel?
That I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering.
Stalnacher was the person that you need.
Well, I know Fidelity Florida Realty and Duane Mountain were big sellers of all that out there, but I've still never heard. I just want to know who Kiel was, you know, it's just one of those folklore, you know.
You had mentioned that the type of soil is going to impact how much nitrogen removal you have, and I assume that the soil type is also going to impact how much the LIDs and BMPs are going to be effective, because if you have something where water is above the surface of the land for 6 months or more, a lot of these LIDs and BMPs that assume water filtration down aren't going to be as effective. Do you have the soils maps, and how does that play into the idea in these very wet areas of BMPs, LIDs, and those sorts of things?
Yes, the soils maps are available. We do have them. We're working with them right now for the piece I just showed you in the future. USDA or USGA, you can easily download them. The LID piece is probably ever evolving. You know, as these nitrogen is, as you know, is difficult to get out of the water system. I think the piece that maybe is lagged behind or hasn't been as quantified is the LID piece to this. We seem to be steered towards a conventional approach, which tells us that as soon as you get the water into the soil system, natural processes take over. Some of the LIDs, like bioreactors, which utilize wood chips and provide a fuel for bacteria to strip the nitrogen, may or may not be dependent on soil type. I think it depends on your application. You can remove nitrogen from having it 6 inches sitting on top of having the water sit 6 inches on top of the ground, just as much as you can remove it from having it percolate into the soil. So yes, they do play a role. I think the LIDs, though, there are multiple ways to remove it, and probably the challenge is in better pinning down those things so that we're not stuck with one or two technologies to remove it.
Matt, the 9,900 pounds, and you're saying it does not include the ag. Now, does that also not include the ag that's the map that DEP has used is a 2004 aerial, which shows a lot of the areas on the south side of Beach Road in ag still that are now developed or being developed. Is that included in the 9,900 pounds, even though it's ag on the map?
No. If it was designated ag lands, then their allocation, if you mind, I'll go back to this slide. If it was, here we go. It's 60,000 overall, and I mentioned the partners are Lee County, Florida Department of Transportation, which is very minuscule because it's the footprint of the roadways, the City of Bonita Springs, and agriculture. So that 60,000 pounds gets cut across those four entities. It's basically weighted in such a manner because of land use and acreage that agriculture would take the lion's share of the 60,000 pounds, and then the next significant stakeholder is the City of Bonita Springs in terms of volume of nitrogen to remove out of the basin. So if it was ag land, it becomes ag's commitment of that 60,000.
Okay. And so the pink, is that the ag, the pink where you're showing on that map?
I believe so, but I can get you the code for that.
Because those areas are
This
converted.
this is a natural swath, I can tell you that.
So those areas that are converted from ag to residential, whether it's south of there or in the DRGR, does that then, do you address that change, or does it wait for the next update? I mean, how does that work as far as when the land use is changed from ag to a residential use?
It's unclear. I said it's a flexible management action plan, so we are partners with the environmental protection folks on this. I think that piece, if you're asking if something comes out of agriculture and comes into something else, does ag lose a commitment? Does the city gain a benefit because it went to a lower load
Gain
reduction?
obligation, for that matter, yeah.
I don't think those pieces are completely fleshed out.
I have a question. If a piece of land does get approved for development, a large piece, aren't there already certain rules within the city that say that it cannot impair or add to the nitrogen load at this time? Or in fact, I thought that in the Bracco study, they were saying that some of them actually have to improve the water that's leaving the property. It has to be in a better, am I correct that Bonita already has those in place or is working on those?
I'd like to, if I could, I'd like to make a suggestion or a request. If when you get into the real minutia of the BMAPs, the Basin Management Action Plans, Miss BMAP is Karen Bickford. And if we could get her to come in and do a comprehensive BMAP specific BMAP presentation, I think it'd be great.
I agree. I think that's good.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us have seen her presentation, and she.
To answer your question, Ms. Bonita, I think that's probably a question for our community development folks.
Okay.
I don't believe the BMAP's relatively new, so
Okay.
I think Mr. Bracco was talking about maybe some of those ideas that you were discussing for lands within there. Oh, here they are.
Hi, I'm the community development folks, and it's an indirect effect. If you're going from an older system or a non-existent system to one that can currently be approved with our standards are in the Land Development Code and those that are enforced by the Water Management District, then you are going to see a reduction in nitrogen just because there's going to be an improved modern system there. There is not a specific statement that says you will remove X amount of nitrogen. There may be some point in the future, but there is not currently. So really what you're seeing is kind of an indirect benefit, a good benefit, but one that is through no fault of our own.
Would I be correct in saying that at this time in the present DRGR that we're discussing, there is no system?
That would be correct.
Okay.
There are informal, smaller systems that take place on private property, but there is no public central system.
Okay.
John, if somewhere down the road, the DRGR was to have its land designation changed to where it was zoned to some type of residential, for example, would the landowner have to immediately get that down to the new levels, or would it be as it's being developed?
It would be as it was being developed. It would be, because there are not any exclusions or specific criteria for this property.
So, for example, and this is one there, like some of the developments, there's one in front of Hunter's Ridge. It's half developed, the other, he's still carrying it as farmland. There's a couple cows that kind of wander around. So that, all that land that the cows are on, which he's getting, I believe, agricultural tax benefits on, he's probably got that exemption on that on the lowering the nitrates or nitrates.
In terms of the tax credits or taxing information, I don't know.
I'm guessing one goes with the other.
The way, yes, sir, I think there's probably a link, but what I think that has happened and what normally happens is as property is developed, that property is then brought up to current standards or those standards that were conditioned at approval.
Right.
If you wanted to treat this area differently, there is a possibility, but there is generally that connection between development of the property and the increase in revenue, or the revenue that is received by that development, and the required improvements that go along with that,
Gotcha.
that development.
I had a question for, over here on the west coast, phosphates is not a big problem compared to the nitrates, is that right?
It would depend on where you are on the West
Well,
Coast,
let's
I
say
believe.
Bonita Springs.
Our issue currently is nitrogen,
Okay.
which is harder to, probably one of the harder pollutants to pull out of the water stream, currently.
How about other chemicals, volatiles and stuff like that?
Right now, what's been identified as our problem is the nitrogen.
Okay, good.
Matt, do you have a list of projects that the city staff has recently completed as far as wastewater or water quality issues, and then some that are maybe in the works or on the books?
Yeah, I do.
Helpful.
We don't handle wastewater.
Not wa- I
That's
mean
a
stormwater,
utility
sorry.
company. But yes, we do.
In some of the, just in visually seeing some of the retention ponds, I guess the filtration ponds that you've put around, like, I think there's one on East Terry, just east of Old 41, on the right-hand side, and you planted some trees in it. What about the filter marshes I'm reading so much about? Do we have any of those in Bonita Springs that are?
We don't. If you're looking at trying to maximize your value, filter marshes are dependent on the amount of water that flows through the system, and how well you can treat it. Those are things that we have considered. It seems, though, that a lot of what we're pointed to is from a regulatory or conventional standpoint is retention ponds, dry retention ponds, like you see and like you saw in that project I showed, or some type of retention. The other slide here. This is along Morton, right in front of Citrus Park. There's a large ditch over here, and so the idea is to capture water, and the water has to stand this a fairly long swale. Basically, it has to sit and percolate into the ground until such time that it stages up, or you get enough volume of water that you have kind of a, starting to get an issue with water. Then it can bypass through this and into the larger ditch and be conveyed on. So we're steered a lot towards retention.
Because the numbers on the flowways haven't been terribly effective so far, have they, in Fort Myers?
I don't know that I can't speak to that. I think that there's some mixed results.
The follow-up on your question, Tori, and then maybe Matt, in your 2011 study where it showed you had a number 2 ranking for your Lightner Creek dry retention pond baffle, and it was 2,600 pounds per year of reduction of nitrogen, which was by far the highest reduction, 10 times that. Is that and that was at the north side of the dog park? Isn't that where that was? That one? And is that one in the works? Because it showed it at 560,000, which seems to be a pretty good bang for the buck if you get that much.
It's still in consideration. We're working through how best to tackle this problem. We've got a few different ideas.
But that one would be a pumped system, wouldn't it? Would that be
No.
pumped? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
During the wet summer that we went through last year, I think it was 65 inches from mid-June to mid-October. When you would go up I-75 or drive around to DRGR, you would see a sea of water from I-75, and that stood there for weeks and weeks and months. Wouldn't that, in effect, be filtering, percolating slowly into the ground? Some of it's draining off, some is evaporating, but the rest is percolating, isn't it?
It would depend on where that water was and what the soil type was and conditions. I can't speak to to a large area like that. I'm sorry.
All right.
Fred, is that the area you mentioned earlier about near the youth ranch up there along 75?
Yeah,
Yeah. And that, I think, is a maintenance issue that maybe, Matt, you could speak
well,
to.
no, I just said it was, but while it was standing there, it would be percolating, evaporating, percolating, a little bit draining to the various swales and
I
eventually.
mean,
to the road.
in general terms, yes, sir, but without knowing exactly where, and I don't know the soils off the top of my head. And even if you have a soil that percolates, obviously when it's plugged full of water, it doesn't percolate so much
That's right.
from
Yeah,
the
once it's
ground.
that high, it's not really soaking in anymore. It's just moving along.
Saturated.
But wouldn't a marsh also have the same super saturated soil? Would seem to me if water's standing in a marsh, the soil is saturated. Because if it wasn't saturated, we'd go into the ground, so.
Well, not yes and no. It depends on what the soil strata is. I've been in other areas, not here, where you run across the swamp and 6 inches below the black dirt, it's solid rock, and that's why it's a swamp.
Right.
Just
And-
depends.
And we have the marl here in Bonita in areas, don't we? Certain areas have the heavy
Yes, ma'am.
marl, yes, that holds it.
I think maybe getting copies of the soils maps would be good to have that as reference. Any additional questions for Matt? Very informative presentation.
One question,
Yep.
back to what Tori is asking, and it may be more of the district question or answer, is this, and I think Fred asked too, the percentage of water, or relative percentage, I guess, for the flowways. You know, here's the Imperial, here's Spring Creek, which doesn't have the crossing. Here's Halfway, here's Estero, here's what might go south. But I think it's good information. I think both of you asked for that. I think it's somewhere in that '09 report, probably.
It is.
But, yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Matt.
Thank
We get
you.
a copy of the,
Yes, as soon
Okay,
as I
good.
have it.
great.
And I think we had a couple of follow-up questions for the district.
Want them to go first?
Yeah, why don't we?
Phil Flood, South Florida Water Management District. And your question regarding regulation. Not everything falls under our responsibility. Much of this area was constructed prior to the regulatory program, which came about in the 80s. And so as a result, you have a lot of ditches and drains that were put on there primarily to keep the water from ponding up, like Mr. Forbes, kind of like you saw after those big rain events. And so while it may be privately held, there's no responsibility on behalf of the Water Management District or perhaps any local government to operate or maintain that. The newer developments that you see, they do go through permitting through the Water Management District, and unfortunately you missed the presentation. We can certainly come back and talk again or sit down with you one-on-one if you'd like and talk a little bit about our regulatory program. But a new development would be expected to treat that water, capture and hold that water. With regard to some of the projects that Mr. Feeney mentioned up there, it was in 2009, following a big rain event, that we offered some monies to the city to do their stormwater master plans, and also they take a look at some of the key drainage areas, and help them to try to reestablish those water flows down some of those ditches, those ones in particular that were in private ownership that the city was not actively maintaining. So we work with them and with the DEP to try to not only remove the vegetation, but also try to reconstruct those to what was believed to be kind of a design back at the time. And the idea was that through the Stormwater Master Plan, the city would then take a look at all of their drainage and water quality out there, and not only look at how to improve that, but also come up with a maintenance program so they can keep those things in operation. So it was kind of in part not only to address the flooding, but also kind of seed money to get the community looking big picture at trying to do some of the drainage in this area and how to appropriately address it. There's some discussion about the watersheds, and unfortunately everybody has a different watershed. DEP is responsible for establishing the TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads, as well as the developing the Basin Management Action Plan, the BMAP. And so they take a look at watersheds. They're called WIBIDs, and they'll cobble together a couple of those in some instances and develop this Basin Management Action Plan based upon the impairments. They look at a whole suite of different impairments, different chemicals, phosphorus, nitrogen, various things, fecal coliform, and then if there's an impairment, then they identify that there's a total maximum daily load that water body can handle before it becomes impaired. And in the case of the Imperial River, the watershed for the Imperial River, it was dissolved oxygen caused by too much nitrogen out there. So DEP has gone and set up, working with all the other stakeholders in the area, and they've identified the responsible parties, as Matt had mentioned, DOT, Lee County, the city, and agriculture, and then they've assigned responsibilities, and then they have all accepted through a signed agreement their responsibility for trying to address that amount of impairment, to try to remove that. And that's the 15-year program that they have in place. And DEP is Karen works for the county, and she does most of the stuff for the county, but DEP is the one who actually manages that program. But kind of back to the watersheds, DEP looked at the one watershed. The South Lee County watershed study looked beyond just the Imperial watershed, because what we found in those big major rain events like that, the Imperial watershed gets overwhelmed and bleeds into the drainage basin for the Cocohatchee, and also with the Estero River. And so we really took a look at kind of that big storm events that we had in the 90s and try to do a master plan for that whole area. And so it's that 315, I believe it's 315 square miles that stretches basically up to State Road 82 and on down here to the south. And they did look at a number of different opportunities, or options, I should say. One of which was to make the Imperial River and some of the other water bodies into major conveyances, essentially straighten them out, deepen them, widen them, but that was not the alternative that was selected. A portion of the Imperial River is already straightened and man-made, and that's the Kiel Canal. Yeah. It would be very interesting, Colin, to find out who Kiel was, Mr. or Mrs., whoever it might be.
Yeah, really.
But the South Lee County watershed study came upon a couple of different approaches, some of which was enhancing the conveyances, others was taking the more natural approach, purchasing some lands. It identified bottlenecks and identified specific projects where we could increase conveyance. But it did take a look at all of the various watersheds and tried to reestablish the historical flows as best as possible, so that it isn't all running out through the Imperial River. It looked at trying to increase conveyances to the south branch of the Estero River, increasing conveyances to Spring Creek, additional conveyances down to the Cocohatchee, as well as through the Imperial. So it did try to kind of readjust the drainage system that was out there in place, and so that plan was adopted by the district in Lee County and has been used on any new permitting project that comes along. Has to be consistent with that South Lee County watershed study. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but I probably made you think of a few new ones.
I have another question. As far as East Bonita is concerned, it's a kind of a two-part question. When I ride out at least 1.5 miles east of Bonita Grande, going out towards 2 miles east, there's a large canal out there. And I know that the Southwest Florida Water Management has a lot of work they want to do out there that you told us you haven't been able to start yet. One is there a date where, I mean, do you guys have the funding now? Are you getting ready? And also the newest development on Beach Road that's just kind of raking dirt out there. Well, it broke ground a while, but then it slowed down. They're moving a lot of water in different directions. Is that what you're talking about conveying it towards the Cocohatchee? Because if some of that east water heads south, that's going to be less coming west to us. Yeah.
Well, every project that comes in to be permitted, they'll be taking a look at the watershed and identifying what is the receiving body, where is that water going to be going to and being discharged to. Right. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the project that you're thinking of. But I mean, we could certainly take a look at that and see. But all likelihood, it probably is headed to the south down there towards the Cocohatchee there. So.
And then talking about by village.
No, yes.
Just to the east?
Yeah, just to the east.
That one, I remember it as Bonita Beach Road, RPD, and there is some connectivity and some flowways that were part of that project. The Conservancy
Heading south.
actually had an agreement with
Right.
the property owner from years ago, and I think Dennis was
That's
part of
what I
that
thought,
also,
yeah.
and there is some connectivity and an acknowledgement of,
See, I'm guessing John Dolmer knows.
yeah.
Well, I still want to ask you a question.
Oh, I won't steal all this thunder.
Oh,
He
no,
can come
that's
back.
You're going to tell us who Mr. Teal was.
Many years ago. Yes, when those properties were permitted, and you can see on the aerial behind you where this was on the very east side of Bonita Beach Road, where it makes that jog to the south and then back again to the east. As part of their approval, they went into a new future land use district, and one of the conditions of that future land use district was to create flowways that do flow to the south. So there is one that's under construction, and if I'm not mistaken, there's another one that will take place when a separate project begins. So at this point, we'll have a partial construction of that. As that property is developed, there'll be several flowways that work their way into, I think it's 2 egress points to the south.
But how much capacity will those flowways have? I mean, this isn't something that's going to be a big flood alleviator for East Bonita, will it?
No, I do not look at this as something on a large capacity. It will handle more than the runoff from these projects, but it is not intended to solve all of the problems. It's supposed to alleviate the very eastern end of some of the issues.
Thanks, John.
The only thing I wanted to say is that that study, that 2009 study, the conclusion of I think it was, I don't know what you call him, the principal investigator, project manager, but he basically said that even though that area was more than Bonita Springs, then when we got down into Bonita Springs, that they tried all different types of techniques to reduce flooding, and nothing seemed to work, even some what he called uncost reasonable. Remember building the big reservoir, they were going to store water during the flooding time and then let the water out slowly in the river. I just want everybody to remember that. It's somehow, the fact that study was done, everybody seems to think flooding is not a problem in Bonita Springs, and it is.
I don't know anybody that thinks that.
Any additional questions for Phil?
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah McLean, publisher of the Banana Peel, and I'm referencing Matt Feeney's presentation. He mentioned, and so did Mr. Flood, that the northern Fort Myers flowing into the Imperial goes to State Road 82. I am curious as to the nitrogen load of the water coming in from the north of State Road 82, and how much of that is not our nitrogen, but their nitrogen coming to our Imperial. The other issue that was very curious of interest to me was when Mr. Feeney was showing us the cypress trees, and it was a bad picture, he mentioned that as a natural filtration system, but he doesn't have a way to establish a number on living cypress trees or natural filtration. And I know that Mr. Jim Beaver is nationally renowned for having done that. He can establish the dollar value of leaving a natural filtration system in place versus dikes, dams, reservoirs, and whatnot. So I'd like to ask the members of this board to speak to Mr. Beaver or have him come and establish, or his criteria. Perhaps that will be useful in establishing leaving some properties alone. And of course, we can use Mr. Grant's knowledge about soils as we delineate what properties where the water should be standing. But there is a way to attach a dollar value for just leaving it alone.
Alex Grant, on one of the problems is on the bacteria in the soils. That's generally in the organic matter of your soil. Unfortunately, in this area, generally it's not very deep. If you are looking on the, in the Everglades area, you have a large peat area, a large organic matter, okay, which does provide you with a nitrogen bacteria in there. You don't have that in this area to that extent. You do have some leaf litter, et cetera, organic matter, but it's not really that deep like you would have in other sections of the United States normally, or certainly on the East Coast of Florida. So that's something to remember. So that's one of the reasons why your nitrogen cannot be used up by the soil types here as much as in other areas of Florida or the United States. Also, you have to remember that these hydric soils can be anywhere from 6, 8, 10 to 12 feet deep before it reaches the parent material. So you've got a lot of that acting as a sponge. Just thought I'd...
Thanks.
Thanks, Alex.
Madam Chairperson, may I interject, please?
Yes.
In order to maximize the value of the limited time we have to spend together today, what I'd like to suggest is that perhaps we move item number 7 forward and we discuss as a group action ahead. I, for one, did not know how 7 people who cannot talk with each other are expected to come up with easily come up with a recommendation. You know, and I'm looking for perhaps a learning process where perhaps we pick a subject and then we spend the next 2 weeks discussing that subject, whether it be aquifers or floodwaters or whatever, and use that as a learning tool to see how we get down the road.
Well, and I think that it sort of 5, 6, and 7 probably all are together in discussion and how we move forward. I had listed out a number of studies that thought would be important for the task force to read, maybe pull together 3, 5, 7, however many key points from each of those studies that we decided would be appropriate, and get those to John and then have those for further discussion at future meetings. I know that there was the idea of taking it one topic at a time, aquifer, water quality, water quantity, but I think some of these documents are going to be kind of cross purposes, so I think maybe we want to look at doing this assessment as far as the documents, because I think the stormwater plan could deal with water quality, water quantity, floodways, flowways. I think that we can fill in a lot of blanks from each of these documents. I also think that we should review the presentations that have occurred in the past and that will occur and pull out key pieces of information from those presentations to add to our list of fact-finding. I mean, right now, we're not at the point of coming up with recommendations. We're really just synthesizing the important information from presentations, from documents, pulling that together, and hopefully, as we move down the road, it'll still be a lot of information, but it won't be the voluminous studies and reports and all the really in-depth technical things, but just key facts that we can then synthesize and hopefully come to consensus on to be the basis for the recommendation. So first, I'd like to go through and take a look and see, are there other studies that we would like to include on the list of our homework tasks? And I pulled these from what John had put up on the website, and I added a couple. The Wellfield Protection Ordinance, the Lee County 1995 and then the 2007, and where Bonita Springs is with the draft of the Wellfield Protection Ordinance. I think that that's something that we might want staff to clarify a little bit. I also added in the list where is it?
There are some more on the back.
Yeah, the crew. the study that synthesized what's going to happen. P, there we go. Number P, Southern Crew Model Verification Report, because I thought it was very interesting in the district's presentation that that work had not been done on the crew lands, and my question was, what is it that they will be doing there? So this item P, the Crew Model Verification Report, it's very technical. We don't need to read every chart and graph for our purposes, but it does give an idea of what's going to happen, what they're going to be doing for that restoration. There might be a better document out there, but that was the one that the district gave me, so I think that that could be a good one to at least get an understanding of what's going on out there.
What question on that one? Didn't the representative, the lady that was here representing the crew, I thought she indicated that that project would not really significantly do anything on flooding or anything inside the part of the DRG we're worried about.
Right.
Well, I think we take a look at that, and that may very well be the outcome. I haven't read that document, so you know, if she can verify that and we don't need to look at it, that's one thing. But I think having an understanding of what's happening there, I think could be good information for us. But are there other documents that need to be added to this?
Here's one right here. This was done in 2006, and even though it talks about it applies to the Tamiami Aquifer, the maps that go in here go through all the different aquifers, and it's for the Bonita Springs area.
What's the name of it?
Is it?
You've got the front page
Oh, I
on
see,
that
okay.
handout that I gave you.
Okay.
And I've asked John to
I'm sorry.
get it. It was also funded, I think, by the
I'm sorry, Mr. Forbes, I don't know what we are referring to. I can't add it to the list unless you tell me what it is. What, I'm sorry.
when you came in, I think there was a letter that I had addressed to you, and then I had an attachment to it.
When I
This-
came in,
This is what it looks like. Maybe somebody took it.
I
I
don't
can
have
give
it.
it to you. After the meeting, I'll give it to you.
This is part of the problem of handing out things at the beginning of a meeting. I don't have it. It's not part of the record at this point.
All right, well,
Maybe
I've got
two of the
plenty
same.
of them here. I laid one on your desk, but I'll get you another one. So, anyway, I think that one would be a good one because it talks about all the different aquifers, and it's specifically for Bonita Springs. That's the title of the report. And we certainly, don't think, would argue with the authorities.
Is this what we're talking about? Sorry.
Yeah.
Since the moratorium that brought us here is a comprehensive plan moratorium on any changes to the DRG, on that comprehensive plan stuff, could we have just the portions of the comp plan that affect the DRGR or water supply or some of these, maybe the water issues? Is that too hard to pull together to where we don't have to look at 1,000 pages? Maybe we're only looking at 300? I mean, because it's the general part of the comp plan has a lot of stuff in there that we probably just
Absolutely.
have a hard time kind of sifting through.
Well, it's, yeah,
I would
a lot
agree
of it's
with
not
it.
pertinent to this
Right.
subject.
Is that something, John, that you could
Sure.
pull together?
If I'm asked to.
This John probably is the one.
That, John? Other documents, and we can add to this in the future, but is there anything missing from this list? that folks
These were
see
on the
right
web,
now?
these are the
Well,
sort of
yeah,
dates on
the-
them? Is there dates that, if you pull them off
Well-
the web, I guess you can
Well,
find them
what-
there, but.
Right.
One of them, I've asked in my letter to John, the Bracco report, they made some reference to Mismer, but I can't find the Mismer report, so I've said, can we get one? And I'm not sure which one it was and when it was done, because they did do one, I know, way back in the early 90s on some property up in Cape Coral that was part of a lawsuit on the DRGR land up there, the Zemi property.
Zemmel?
I'd like to know when it was done, who paid for it, and have a copy of it to read.
John?
I'm just looking for a little clarification here. So we have the list that was supplied. The bulk of this is on the website. Today I've heard about adding the handout that Fred just gave and taking a look at what that report is, following up with Bracco about the Mismer report. If we don't have that already, maybe it's just referred to as something else, I'm not sure. and then all comp plan sections that relate to DRGR, but I'm unsure what you want me to do with that. I mean, if I post those also to the website, am I then to do something in addition, or are you then
No, I
responsible to
think
look at those? I'm
post
not-
it to the website, and then we will, when
Then
we
it's up to you
decide
guys.
what we're going to start
Gotcha.
with. But once the group comes forward with our, the key elements from
Right.
those various documents, I think we'd be looking to you to kind of pull that together, synthesize it, be the record keeper for that. Because I think we're going to want to have that information in advance of the meetings. Or maybe we want to come and bring that information to the meetings and discuss it. What is the
Well,
feeling of
what
the?
what I was thinking was when I read all the information that came of everybody's recommendations and plans forward, and there were 4, I think, in total. And what I thought might be a direction for us to take today would be to say, okay, in light of these studies, we should have categories, I think, so that if I have a question on the water quality, and then refer to this study, that study, so that we can get a consensus on the science. I'm going to kind of keep going back to that, because that's where we all, in the past, this discussion is often, I don't mean with the water task force, I mean in the past 20 years, that it falls apart when people just don't agree. And so if we could have categories that we're going to discuss, whether it's water quality and the subcategory idea. So when I'm looking at the Misner report or the stormwater, I can say, okay, in regards to percolation in this part of the DRGR, are we percolating or are we not, and at what rate? And in regards to even the idea of how much cypress helps take nitrogen out of the soil is a very, very relevant point. A lot of the land doesn't have cypress on it. So we have to kind of get to a place, otherwise things keep getting repeated and repeated and they get a false truth. And I'm just trying to get to where we read these, and I'm all for reading them, but I need to read them with something in mind.
Well, I think, and that's a good point, and my thought was, we read a study, the South Lee County Watershed Plan Update, and those critical key elements that we feel, not opinion, but here's what it states, and we believe that this is extremely relevant to our discussion, then that is put under the category of this is a water quality issue. This is a flowways issue, and then cite where that information came from. So at the end, we'll have a list of facts under water quality, water quantity, flowway, aquifer, with the reference to where that came from. So that is an idea for getting it pulled together.
I think what you're saying, and I think the studies are categorized this way, the Baraka report was, probably the comp plan is, you got water quantity, which is your flooding and your flowways. You've got water quality, which is your nutrient removals and your treatment. And then you've got your groundwater resources, which is your aquifer and your well field issues, and then things like best management practices or low impact development cross maybe 2 or 3 of those. But I think if we keep it in that grouping, and I think we probably should keep it, John Dolmer, is the comp plan in that kind of grouping? I know you've got water supply as an issue, then you've got water resources, I think, separate, but that water supply typically is your quantity of water for public supply, but, I mean...
Generally speaking, it is. I mean, there are some oddities just to keep it interesting, but for the most part, it's broken down pretty well.
And then wastewater is another component of water issues.
There's, for both the water supply and the wastewater, there's both sub-elements to the infrastructure element.
Yeah, we
so
don't
those are
want to
very
forget
easy to
about
produce.
flows and levels. That's really important for the health of the streams and rivers.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think
Yeah.
my point was I think all the reports are important, and there's going to be portions of every report that we can reference. My point in suggesting that we break this down into smaller segments and then focus on those segments is so that we don't do what we've been doing, and that's suffer from analysis paralysis. We've got so many studies that we just keep talking about and so much information that keeps coming to us. There's no There's no delineation of what we're doing so that, hey, next meeting we're going to talk about this specific agenda item or this specific subtopic so that we can focus
Well, I
and then
think that's
focus
what
on our
we're-
studies.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We really haven't, as of yet, sat down and said, here's the list of documents, and, you know, generally speaking, these are more the stormwater documents. So we'll read those for the next meeting, get our information together. The tough part is we only have 2 weeks between meetings,
Right.
and if we're going to get our key points to John to put into, you know, some sort of master template for this, we would have to do that by a week from now. So we need to decide if we want to bring that information with us to the meetings to discuss and then give to John, or if we want to make that commitment to get it to him a week before.
I think that the latter that you said, that you want to figure where you're going to have 2 meetings, so I don't think you could productively do it. I would also say, whether you all do it or not, I'm going to do it. There are places, hopefully there are not that many, but if there's a place where Bracco says something, and when you go to that site, it's a different statement entirely. Instead of it being daytime, it's midnight. That's going to be noted, and at the end, that should be part of the recommendations we make back to the city, that the errata sheet or something be issued.
Is it too difficult for everyone to bring their ideas to here, though? Because for me, to get all my ideas down and to John a week before, that gives me very few days to read it and
Right.
study it and work on it before I already have to get it emailed to you. So I would prefer, just thinking about it off the top of my head right now, to be able to have a category, and I'm even talking about something like, okay, we're going to talk about septic tanks next time. So in light of these things, let's put septic tanks to bed at the next meeting, or try to. If we have to go ask some questions to a few people afterwards, that'll be fine, but try to access it so we can say, okay, from now on, this is our view, or the Water Task Force has this general view on septic tanks. Done. Next thing. But I don't think I can get that done a week ahead of time and get it to John.
Good. I don't think I can
Okay,
either.
good.
So.
I have a question regarding this parking lot. If we have a specific question, like I have one in mind right now, it's specific, clearly, I think pretty clearly focused. And what's the plan for this parking lot? I mean, you want to hear my question? And then I think it happens to be about septic tanks, and it would give us something to focus our reading at.
Mhm.
And the question is, and I think probably everybody's thought about this question, but I haven't heard it asked yet, but let me make a quick hypothetical. 700 units right now in the DRGR that are approximately 10 acres, or are, at least right now under the current rules, are one development unit. Let's say there's 700 of them. And there will be, I suspect, on the part of some people, some entities, an effort to increase that by 30-fold. In other words, instead of 1 unit per 10 acres, it'll be 3 units per acre. That's a 30-fold increase, which would be more difficult for the environment to deal with. 700 septic tanks or 21,000 units with all of their associated so-called dandruff, like whatever happens when you have a development unit in this 21,000 group. You're going to have, of course, roads, cars, parking lots, people fertilizing, and so forth. So it's a matter of 700 units versus 21,000 units, and how does that...
Nobody's ever said 21,000 units.
Well, I've heard it said, so don't say no one ever
I-
said. I've heard it said.
I think with
I've
this-
heard 3 units per acre
But none of the
suggested.
studies, yeah, okay, well, 3
Okay,
units per
good.
acre on the undeveloped is only, you got 2,000 acres undeveloped. So that's why Bracco came up with 6,000.
Well, whatever the figures are, that's just the question. The
I think
question
you're-
is, how does the 1 unit per 10 acres versus the developed units? And,
You would
know,
also
whatever
have
the figures.
700 wells. And I haven't heard that mentioned, that if there's a house on that 10 acres and there's a septic, there's a well.
Of course.
So you've got not only 700 septics,
Right.
but you've got 700 wells.
Right,
And that's a huge thing, other than actually bringing the
Well,
water.
maybe it
into
is,
the-
that's the question.
Right.
One last question on the septic tanks. I thought it was 750, but let's say it's
Well,
700.
whatever, yeah, I'm just picking
Yeah, but
around figures.
I would guess that somewhere in the DRGR, there is maybe of that 700, maybe 250 to 300 that are fairly clustered in a more concentrated area.
Sure.
I mean, I'm asking
Oh,
Tori, I mean,
Well, are you saying where people are actually living now?
is there an area where a reasonable percentage of that 700 existing septic tanks are kind of clustered?
No, there's various, down all the side streets. There's no, like for me, in my section, there's only, I think, probably 8, because we're on the most eastern. So we're 8 there, but if you go west of us, then you go about every 10 acres, or then you might have 2 empty lots, and then another one, and another empty lot, and then, so it kind of scatters out throughout that area.
Wonder if that Karen Bickford would be able to tell us how much nitrogen per year or nitrates get generated by the
Leaked
septic.
out?
Yeah.
I think she'll have that sort of information. We can invite her, right, John?
Right, sure.
Yeah, I was going to get into that
That's
too, is
good.
that we've had, 3 very good presentations with the district, BSU,
Right.
and we said we might want both those back later with more information and questions, and then, of course, with the city, and then we've got the public health or whatever, the septic tank
Right.
regulators. Then we got DEP, which is the water quality and wastewater quality as
Right.
well, regulators. So we probably really still in this educational mode to be able to ask intelligent questions and
Right.
then, more intelligent questions, I guess. But,
Wouldn't we be better off to do more what Nicole was saying, rather than, to me, the septic tank is so specialized that doing aquifers or something else first, and then continue to get information, like from this Karen Bickford and all that, so we understand better how big a problem the septic tanks are.
And maybe Keith Kibbe too, because
Yeah,
he's
Keith Kibbe,
the
yeah.
scientist that deals with this stuff.
Yeah, they
and
both
we
are
can
in the
science.
same organization.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was arguing for, picking a topic. Let's tackle it, let's do a trial run, see how we learn how to do it, because we won't do it right the first 2 or 3 times, of course. But
My concern
idea is how you divide the work. up.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that for these big topics like water quality, quantity, a lot of these studies are going to have potentially important points. And so,
Absolutely.
I don't know how we ensure that for something big like water quality, do we have to go through all of these to make sure that we're getting all the salient points? Or should we pick studies that we're going to read so that if the study is cross-cutting across several topic areas, we focus on that study and then what's plugged into water quality, water quantity, flowways. I'm just thinking it could be a little difficult for some of these more wide-ranging topics to, get everything that we would need to be able to kind of button down that topic and move on.
Yeah, item C on here is the Everglades West Coast basin of the, of what we're talking about here, so of the, regarding the TMDL. So our portion of it is the Bonita Spring, or the Imperial River portion, I guess, but that overall, the big basin is the Everglades West Coast Basin, item C.
May I suggest there's like 20-some studies. We can divide it by 7, everybody be responsible for 3, and maybe next week we take one study and try to take a swag at it, to think about pulling information out and getting it into John in time to then consolidate it, just as a ready, get, set exercise, learning how to do it.
The only problem, we're going to run into the same thing about the minutes. What I think's important, Dennis is going to think isn't important, but he's going to have something I don't see any way that
I think everyone has to read the studies and pull out what they think is key to it.
And a point was made earlier, it's 2 weeks is not enough time. There's nothing that says we have to meet every 2 weeks.
No.
So, I mean, I certainly, if we want to take 3 weeks, pick a topic, come back in 3 weeks and talk about that specific topic.
I like the 2 weeks because we have so many presentations.
Oh, I
But I
understand.
don't
No,
think we have to
and I'm not
come
saying
up
we
with
shouldn't meet every 2 weeks. I'm just saying if time is an issue,
then we don't have to discuss that one thing every 2 weeks. We can have a subject for a month, but
Right.
still have the meetings.
Right.
Because these, I'm learning so much and these presentations are fabulous.
I was going to say, the presentations to me are more important than the studies if they hit those topics of those studies,
Right.
because you can get that done instead of reading for hours and hours. You hopefully in 30 minutes you can get pretty much the gist of that. So we just get the right people in front of us, I think, to help educate us.
right. I have no objection to continuing with the people coming and presenting, because I do think that's far more helpful than reading. But at the same time, with no focus, I think we're going to be in the same position 3 months from now saying, wow, that's a lot of information, now what?
Well, why don't we then, we have the next several meetings set. Why don't we focus the next meeting on presentation, whoever's going to be presenting, and then for the following meeting, have a good chunk of these studies or topic areas that we want to discuss and really dig into. That would give us 4 weeks to really dig into that, and we should then be able to get our information into John in 3 weeks.
So
I'm
So it
so-
is.
I'm
are
sorry,
we
I'm not
reading in
understanding.
this? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
We wouldn't have our homework assignments due for the next meeting because that's in 2 weeks' time.
How
We
big
would
is
do
the
it-
homework assignment?
Well, we have to decide that.
I mean, are what you're suggesting we read all 20 studies?
No,
and then
not all 20
Well,
studies,
no,
but
and
we
then-
figure out what it is that we want to, following on your suggestion of if 2 weeks isn't enough, we could focus our next meeting on more educational presentations, and then for the following meeting, have that first chunk of homework assignments due.
I'm still
Or
unclear.
we
John, are we having a presentation next week?
Yeah, I've
next
been able
meeting?
to confirm that the April 7th meeting, that Roger Kopp will be able to be here for that. I did not get a whole lot of feedback from the group, by the way, about the presenters list and prioritizing. I did from some of you. So based on that, the April 21st meeting, we're trying to still pin down Eric Livingston for that one.
Good.
He was the next on the list. Beyond that, I really don't have a consensus of who you want to hear after that. So we have the next two, I think, set. I know we have the next one set. I think we have the next two set. And then I'm kind of open to suggestions about who the
I
group
had
would like to-
mentioned DOT, and
Right.
then I wanted to hear again from Greg Stewart of the Greg Rawl.
Again, I have heard back from some of you.
Right.
But not all. So I guess I'm hinting to those of you who didn't give me a priority. If you want to, please do.
I thought at last meeting, and I could be wrong, that we'd indicated we wanted to get someone in from Department of Health or whoever's in charge of septic tanks, and they would cover the latest, greatest types of septic tanks and
Fred, what we didn't do, though, was say when you wanted to hear them.
Yeah.
We have a list. There's probably
Right.
about 15 different entities now that I have listed. And that's, you're right, that's one of them. But
I think
I was
that,
kind of looking for some direction from the group as to prioritization. Again, we've got, I think, the next two. Beyond that, please give me your thoughts. If not, I'll just go down the list.
let me say one thing. I think most everybody in here had Bracco, Greg Stewart, and all of them make several presentations to us. In fact, there was even, I know I went to 2 workshops, had private meetings with them. I think we should have them back, but I think we ought to wait till we're a little further along. And to me, a lot of these other things like septic tanks with Department of Health would be better. I'm not saying I don't want to hear this, but I think it could come a little bit later to hear it. I think we'd be able to ask them more intelligent questions.
I think the septic tank's a good one. And the other one is the DEP, the Florida DEP, because they're implementing the BMAP.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think those two wastewater element, or that one's wastewater and the other's water quality, those are pretty important for us.
So should we decide on some studies to have read for this? I mean, whether we choose the
Yeah, what's the homework
stormwater
assignment?
management, let's, pick the ones.
Roger Kopp's going to talk about the '09 update, or is that what he's going to be covering, or?
That was my next question, was if you would like to define the content of what you'd like him to speak about.
Yeah. How about him telling us how well our 2010 plan considered what was done in the '09.
Was he involved in the 2010 plan? I don't know.
No, he wasn't, but he certainly can look at it and probably tell us, did it really build on what was done in the '09 study, or is it just looking primarily at a smaller part and a lot of stuff that was in the '10?
Well, the Water Management District funded both of them and adopted both of them.
That's right, but what do we have to lose by hearing what the man has to say?
I don't know I'm not following this conversation, I'm sorry.
Well,
Are we talking about having Mr. Kopp? And what is his usual?
expertise?
Yeah.
He was the project manager that did the reference 2009 Southern Lee County, which Bonita Springs was in that.
Watershed or?
The
He was the
watershed study,
hydrologist.
the modeling and
Okay,
all.
then we should choose the pieces of material that we should have prepared, or at least be studying that he's going to speak on, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, but John asked if there was anything that we wanted Roger to know that we might ask about.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
The question I was trying to ask was, as we have done for the previous presenters, I need some idea, general or specific, up to you, of the content that you'd like them to present on. We've
Right.
been able to provide that to the other folks. I'd like to offer Roger that same consideration, rather than just have him come down here and
Right.
not know what you want to hear about. But you need to tell me that.
It would be the hydrology of the Bonita DRGR,
Perfect. I mean, that's-
and in
So
reference to the.
F is the DHI hydrological study of the DRGR. That would be one that I should.
That would be one.
Yeah, that's what I want, is someone to say, okay, look at this, this, and this, and then I'll be ready.
Right.
Sure.
And the
Is that-
south-
Is that correct, though? Is that one relative to his
I don't know,
work?
I'm asking.
I think
Yeah,
it is.
it was, the DRGR was part of the area that they did the
But I don't want to
modeling.
study the whole Lee County DRGR necessarily.
Right.
What's
The-
relevant
With
to
Southern, it was concentrated on Southern Lee County.
The South Lee County Watershed Plan update.
Can you give me a letter?
That's B.
Okay.
B.
Yeah.
It's got B and F. It's first afternoon.
Yeah, and
4-7, right?
But I would recommend for us that we might also at least look at the 2010 city funded study, what was city and South Florida water management study, just to see if we have any questions.
Which one is
But
that,
which
Fred?
study?
what is that?
There's lots of city studies.
2010 Bonita Springs Stormwater Management Master Plan or something like that.
That's the one we just heard from today, though. I mean, that's one that Matt
Well,
just
no,
talked.
well,
Right.
he gave you a very cursory overview on that.
We
I
talked
just
about-
said if we, if.
So you're talking
I'm
about
gonna
G
read it
G and H?
itself,
G and
so-
H, G and H.
Yeah,
Yes?
Yeah. That's an overload already.
2 reports.
4 reports.
4? Is there 4 we're
I've
gonna-
got B, G, H.
GH.
Well, H is the water
A.
quality part of that. So G would fit into the quantity, which in flowways, which COP would talk about, right?
Right.
So you
Okay,
got
so just
B,
G. B and G, okay.
And what about F, the hydrological study of the DRGR? I would
I'm
think
not
that
familiar
would.
with that one. What is that one?
That's the one Tori proposed.
Well, I just picked it out
Yeah,
because it
she
had
was just
hydrological
asking.
in it, and I mean, I'm just trying to nail down a few that I'm not familiar with that study, but I just want to focus.
I
kinda-
think that probably that's going to fit in
Okay,
best with,
So would you run through those letters again,
it would
Madam
be
Chair?
B, the South Lee County Watershed Plan update. B,
D, bravo.
Okay.
F, the DHI hydrological study of the DRGR, and G, Bonita Springs Stormwater Master Plan update.
BFC, is that it?
BFG,
BFD, okay.
No H.
no H, no. Okay, before we set all of this, public
Just
comment?
one other study, there's, excuse me, Deborah McLean with the Banana Peel. Was, in speaking with someone I deeply respect, it was mentioned to me that the Conservancy actually performed a study and perhaps was involved in a lawsuit where they actually determined that septic versus a planned development, they determined the two different loads of pollution. That yes, we have septic and we have well and we have nitrogen, but once you build the homes and the sidewalks and the underground sewers and culverts and the sprinkler systems and import the landscaping and you have the houses and the cars and the kids, there is another type of pollution. And that, I don't see that study here, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the case, but it was a conservancy win.
Do you know how long ago that was?
I will find out for us.
Management practices were
I'll
occurring
find
at
out
that
for
time.
us. I just think that you should be open to that particular study because it's a resounding theme among you all, which is better. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Do we have time to cover one more point before we?
Well, I think let's just wrap this up quickly. You have some guidance for Roger's presentation.
I do.
We have our assigned reading, and will we then bring our comments, our highlights to the meeting and plan?
The next meeting or the meeting after next?
Next meeting?
Next 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, we'll bring our information and go from there. Oh, Alex, did you have?
Yeah, one thing. I remember in 1960, we bought the property from Faith Stalnaker, and she was the real estate agent, and her husband, Mr. Stalnaker, was the one that dug out the Kiel Canal. This was sometime in 1960 era.
Right.
So if somebody can do some research work back.
I've been asking
Homework
for years.
assignment.
I haven't found out yet.
But that would be about that time when that Kiel Canal was first dug out. And
There's no
tried to
question
be
when it was done. Well, the question is, who is Kiel?
Well,
That's the question.
the person that would know that would be Stalnaker,
Yeah.
who's probably dead by now.
Oh.
That's, yeah, I
You know who
understand.
might know is Donnie Daychuk. I'll ask
He
him.
might.
He might.
One other item that I think we should probably, one other item that I think we want to have information consolidated from are the past presentations. So I don't know if we want to add that to our homework assignment of what are those key elements from the district presentation, from BSU's presentation, from Kevin's presentation, from today's presentation that fit into those categories of water quality, quantity, aquifer.
But I think that's what we have to discuss, otherwise we're all going to bring them in from our own personal point of view of what we thought was important and relevant.
Right,
So
but
I think
I
it's,
do think we want to, before we get too many presentations under our belts, to start discussing what are those key elements.
I'm not so much concerned with the presentation element side of it. I'm concerned with the question, flowways or septics or quality or quantity rather than, okay, well, this guy said this and this guy said that, because then we're back again. I think it needs to stay on subject versus presentation. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think we're hearing a consistent theme of let's focus on subtopics so that we can then focus our.
Right, but
our-
what the presenters say can fit into the subtopics.
Absolutely. But I think the point is if we can pick a subtopic to discuss at the next meeting or whatever, then we can narrow our focus as to what we're going to be discussing.
Right, but I don't want to lose the good information that has been provided in
Well,
the
I think
past.
it's going to be on the website.
It's on the
It'll still be
website.
there.
Right, it's on the
Yeah.
website, but
I mean-
it should play into
Just add to our-
potentially.
Just add to our list of documents.
Yeah, it could play into potentially our resources of information.
But all we have to
and
do is
final
go back and
recommendation.
review, I mean, all the meetings are videoed, and I've gone back and watched those videos several times to.
Right. So do you have a couple of key points from those presentations that you want put into the mix
Oh,
of
sure.
fact-finding?
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
Pull
I get
those
what you're
together
saying, yeah.
also.
Okay.
Yes, Fred?
Well, this may be not exactly where it's supposed to be, but I think you're getting close to when you want to adjourn. Number one, to answer a question that Dennis Raisin is redlining my thing. For 12 years when I worked for the Department of Air Force and 8 years when I worked for the governor of the state of Ohio, I wrote lots of scopes of work, wrote the criteria, ran the evaluation panels and all that. I feel that we must go ahead and at least rough out work statements for something that needs to be done in the area of flooding and stormwater management to see if we do need better criteria for the design to be done if we were going to develop the DRGR and surrounding areas, number one. Number two, I think that the other one that needs to be tackled is to see about writing something up that would be done in that total maximum daily load, what could be done to reduce it, local requirements and all that. Truthfully, I'm a little less interested in that one than I am the other because there are other things going on, but both of those things need to be done. And I think that, and I'm sure that David Gallagher, when he worked in the Pentagon, must have written scopes of work and all that kind of stuff.
But do you feel that the
now,
city's
I have no problem with, once we do it, letting city staff critique it, come up with suggestions, but I would like to say this is what we think we need.
But do you think that the city, I mean, I thought from the presentation today that the city is already on top of reducing, that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and they have a complete staff that's working on lowering those and working out those plans. I don't know why.
I said I was not nearly as much on that as the flooding and the design criteria that needed to be adopted by local regulations.
But the stormwater management section of the city staff works on that.
That's right. And I'm saying it, I don't necessarily believe that what we have is adequate to do the job if we were to do the DRGR. And I don't see what is wrong with at least drafting up a work scope. And furthermore, why not let some of these experts look at it and tell us if we do need it?
Fred, I think what you're saying is the same thing I had said on when I did the work item, but I did it in the context of saying, let's take what we have in our stormwater master plan, which includes this area, all of this area, and then update that to include, if it's developed, then what do you have and what do you need to do?
You and I may be talking the same thing. All I'm going to do is draft it up. I want to give it to you all, and then I'm probably going to have to duck. But at least we'll get a straw person's thing out there, and then you all can add to it, and we can see if we can come to a consensus.
Yeah, my point there is that we have two studies that aren't that old that the city operates under that were jointly funded with the city and the Water Management District, one on quantity, one on quality. They don't assume different land uses, they assume what's there, right?
No,
so now we need to say, well,
what I'm proposing is that we would look at different land. One of the things I was going to, if I got a chance to write it down, I was going to say, evaluate flooding with the existing stormwater management design criteria that's in effect today, both what's at South Florida Water Management, and then John Domer said that we use 1.5 inches as opposed to the 1 inch of South Florida, and then do it and run that scenario against Baracco's 3 different recommendations. 2,500, then it was around 5,000.
You could do that way.
7,500 with some commercial, and that, I'm trying to get us to that win-win thing.
Well, the other thing that, all the way back to the Rawl report,
Right.
and I think maybe there's probably a couple other ones in there too, recommended that it'd be good to have a master plan for that area. Otherwise, you're going to have each landowner coming in. They'll have the criteria.
And I can't disagree with you.
Okay.
Fred, let me mention one thing, because we have sunshine, so we can't talk about it here. But a filter marsh can be and usually is a much different critter than a retention pond.
Right.
And if you want to look at an interesting filter marsh in this area, so it'll have to do with our particular problems, look at the 6 Mile Cypress filter marsh.
Yeah.
They use they use plants that take up nitrogen better and various things that just the retention pond doesn't do.
See, and the only thing that I don't know, and I think Alex Grant brought up an interesting point, is the soil makeup of that area of 6 Mile Cypress substantially different than the DRGR because of the one type of soil that Alex.
Well, they'll get into that when
Okay.
you read about it.
I'm all for it. All I want to do is I just want to get, because the thing is, we are officially 25% used up.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've got to try and come together, and I'm not against development. All I want to do is make sure that if we need to change the criteria out there from that 1.5 inches that John says the city has to 2 inches or whatever, that we could say, okay, we could recommend some things if the city would do this.
And
Now, the city may not do that, but at least we've gone on record of
Can I just ask a question there, John? John, that is possible, isn't it, to have that area east of, let's say, east of 75 have a different criteria than a more intense
Certainly,
criteria?
sure.
Okay.
You can tailor
All right. That is
standards
make
for that
before we-
area.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's part of our
Right.
assignment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do that if nobody, that's why I wanted to ask. I did ask John if he would get me a copy of 2 RFQ packs that went out. One was for that 2010 stormwater management design and the evaluation criteria that they used, as well as the one that led to the Bracco report. And I'll kind of try and make my format kind of match that stuff. It'll be on Word. I can even give John the file, and everybody can have fun putting red marks and strike-throughs and all that.
Just one final. Go ahead.
Earlier we had a representative from the mine who volunteered to bring a presentation forward.
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest we take up his offer and give him a week, month or two, or whatever he needs to talk, to get ready.
Yeah, I think he said 6 weeks or.
6 weeks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's on the list.
And just a final thought, I know that oftentimes we have follow-up questions, and we have a lot of the folks that have the answers in the audience. So I would think that at future meetings, I know it's getting kind of late today, but if we do have follow-up, as we did today, of having Phil come up and answer questions, having them as part of this for answering specific questions, they're here, we might as well use their knowledge base if we do have additional.
And along those lines, again, in trying to keep this as organized as possible, for example, after BSU made their presentation, Dave, I think, had some follow-up questions.
I've not got answers yet.
Well, we do, but that's what I'm trying to get at, Dave. When those follow-up questions when they come individually, let's say, now it's not part of the meeting when those folks were here, then I need to communicate that to those folks. They need to now get it back to me. It's not part of the agenda. I have written responses, but they came in after the packet went out. So I'm asking you, how would you like me to handle those things? Does it make more sense for me to print them out and hand them out to you at the next meeting, which would be now, so you can all get them and see them at the same time? Or would you prefer that when they come in to me, I just send them out to you electronically? Again, I'm trying to facilitate a conversation amongst you, so I'm not sure what works best for you, but we do have responses. These folks want to respond to your follow-up questions.
I would think if you could get them out to us before the meeting, so that
Right.
we don't have to try to read it
And because we can't talk outside the meeting, then I'm more prepared to talk because I've. which
And
might
again,
not be a good
that's why I'm looking for your lead, because the problem with that is, of course, you get a packet in, and then the next day you might get something, and then the next day you might get something, and then the next day you might get something. So some groups don't like that. That's why I'm asking.
Would it ultimately, on those follow-up questions, would we want to also post that on the website?
Thank you.
By that presentation, put a little sub-thing, South Florida Water Management, and then the couple follow-up questions they came back with would be under it?
I'm sorry.
Could we get that information then on the website under the pull-down tab?
For that
Sure.
presentation,
Mhm.
or that whoever we ask the question.
Well, and John, maybe it makes sense on the website I know we've got studies, maps, reports, or studies, maps. Maybe it makes sense to have a subcategory for presentations.
I thought we did for the PowerPoints. I know we were planning on, I think it might be up there. If not, we'll
Okay,
do that.
if it's updated,
Yeah,
I haven't been
mhm.
on in a couple days, but thanks.
Okay, looks like we've gone through any additional information, review of material relative to individual field trips. I don't think there's anything new on that.
Did you add, John, to the field trip? I don't know if you remember. I know you get a lot of information. I thought that on top of your map that you sent, Dennis, that it's very interesting if you drive out Terry Street and you go to where it turns to dirt and you continue 1 more mile, you have the BSU's eastern well field. And it's still bumpy, but it's quite, until it starts raining, you can get out there pretty easy. And then you have the surrounding land to the right belongs to Southwest Florida Water Management. And I think South Florida Water Management. And some of the land out there is 2020, et cetera. But most of that land, when you get out there, that mile is conservation and has been acquired. And I think that it's very interesting to juxtapose that portion of, even though you're at the city limit, that part of Bonita and the DRG it's a really easy way to see the pristine, beautiful part versus the part that's a little bit more trashed out in some areas closer when you go further west. And it's easy access. It's absolutely beautiful, and it really gives you a feel for either restoration, if that's a possibility, further west, or to where the damage that's been done and where maybe some form of development or how we could improve it. And it really gives you an idea so that one doesn't just feel the entire DRGR is quite like that part that which has been preserved and where the well fields are. And also because I believe that, and we'll get into this, but I believe that the significant recharge area that's discussed in a lot of these is that area. It's not the further west area that we're talking about over on Morton Avenue, et cetera. So that gives you a really easy way to get there, and you won't have to do any hiking or anything unless you want to, because it's awful pretty.
I thought you were going to offer some horses. And
Yeah,
you
really?
could go. Okay.
Take everybody out.
Okay. Future presentations. John, do you need any additional?
Well, again, I think I know we have the next one. I think we have the next 2 set up. Unless I hear anything different, I'll go through the responses that I did get and start checking off the list and inviting more folks. That would be for the May meetings, because April we have covered now. If you have not given me your priorities and feel like you want to, please do.
Okay. Any additional member items? No? Staff updates?
Just the responses from BSUs that I did give out already. I will try to, as information comes in, even if it's after the packet, send it out to you individually, do with it what you may. I do have one question and one, I guess, kind of comments that, again, this was based on conversations with the city attorney. Different volunteer groups handle these issues differently, obviously. Typically, when a volunteer group is formed, the chair operates as the spokesperson, or the chair and the group designate a different member to act as the spokesperson. And that usually has to do with going in front of city council. So again, you can handle it any way you want, but we would like to remind you that if you make presentations or just go before city council during the public comment section, none of you have given up your right to speak as individuals. Please bear that in mind. You can certainly do that, but it is very important that you not give the impression that you're speaking on behalf of or as a representative of this particular task force. That's important so that whatever consensus comes out of the task force is conveyed to the council as a consensus that was formally taken. So just wanted to remind you folks of that kind of issue, certainly not indicating that you don't have the right to speak to council, but be careful in what capacity that's presented. That was the comment. The question is, and as is typical, I try to go through the next couple of meetings. The agenda for April 7th so far is Roger will be coming here to give a presentation. From what I've heard today, the group is individually going to look at studies B, F, and G and pull out what you think is salient from those studies to either talk to him about or ask about. Beyond that, I don't know what you want on that agenda. I will get with Nicole and we'll try to rough out an agenda for the time that would be left. On April 21st, again, we're trying to pin down, well, I'll try to pin down Eric Livingston for that presentation. There was some talk here today about the group planning some 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead and doing homework assignments and coming back to pick a topic for that meeting that you would come back and be ready to talk about. I don't know that I got a consensus on what that topic would be. I don't know if you want to do that now. It might be helpful to try to pin down a subject matter, and then folks would have that period of time
that would be helpful.
to look at the different.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if it's Eric, it would be stormwater.
Well, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's there. I mean,
No,
that
but
could
I
be
think
helpful,
it
but
would-
that's up to you guys. So.
We're reading those reports, it would seem to me that would be the,
Right.
and that also kills summarizing the points that Roger Kopp has to say that we all can agree on, or,
Well, we're beyond the Roger meeting now. We're talking
Yeah.
about the
Right.
following meeting.
So can we go through and get some letters for that one so that I'm ahead of the game?
We'll be hard pressed to do anything what we have there.
Yeah.
But I mean, then we have a month to the second grouping,
Right.
so.
So in our studies list for the 421 meeting with Eric, which is, I'm assuming, stormwater related, what would you suggest that the group focus on?
well, you'd want to read the 2011 Cities Master Plan on that, for one. And then, what was another, there was one, Dennis, that you brought up that you thought that related to that.
For the water quality?
Yeah.
Well, you've got the BMAP study, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think the other one is, I know,
You got the 2011 Study of the City, too,
right, yeah.
plan. So there's, is
well,
that Everglades study?
Yeah,
you were
that's the Everglades rest, that's the BMAP, yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay.
2012
Right.
Yeah,
DEP.
Everglades,
Yeah.
West Coast.
Okay.
So what,
that's,
so what
Where's
letters
that?
are those?
number C,
C?
C as in cat, the Basin Management Action Plan.
Yeah.
C and dog.
Yeah, should we have D then, Imperial River TMDL?
Is that a separate report?
Yeah, it's water quality, not stormwater.
MDL's.
Okay.
Are we gonna,
Well, yeah.
I would, the narrower the focus, I think, the better,
Okay, what do you
as
suggest?
I keep saying.
Okay,
Well, I mean,
toss some out then.
But the first one was BFD, that's one for
Well,
the next meeting, right?
BFG.
G, oh, okay. And then the other one might be C and D with other, we can always make other suggestions.
no, let me see if I can't summarize it, I'm sorry. For April 7th, Roger Kopp's going to be speaking. The group is going to look at and bring their comments that day, not beforehand, because, again, you got time constraints, so it'll give you some time to digest B as in boy, F as in Frank, G as in George. April 21st.
but John, not limited to that. I mean,
Oh,
I
no,
think-
no, no,
I think our
certainly.
homework,
I'm sorry.
right, right.
You're right.
Okay,
Cer-
thank
certainly.
you.
Didn't mean to
Just for
imply limited to that,
clarification,
but that in particular we think will be helpful.
For
Thank
sure.
you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right.
On the 21st, for Eric, we'll have a little more time, obviously. So what would be helpful is if you could take a look at the studies, and I think you've identified so far C, Charlie, G, George, H, Harvey. I don't know if there's any other ones. Those
I think
would be-
O for sure, but that goes along with Kevin's presentation too. Kevin Irwin's.
I don't think you need to add G again, because G is really more quantity, so you H,
Well, I thought we were talking quantity for Eric.
No, quality.
quality.
He's more into
He's a
quality
water
than
quality
quantity.
So not G.
All right, well then
How
D,
about
then
O?
D would make sense.
Right.
The TMDL
C and
report
D,
would make
yeah.
sense.
Is that a separate study on TMDLs versus the Everglades?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
So that's
And the-
C and D, Charlie and Dog, or G. What are you saying?
C, D, and H.
H. And is the middle one D or G?
D. D is in dog.
Dog. Okay, that's what I got down. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Are there others that we think will be,
Well, I think, as Scott has pointed out, he may find a report that we don't have here, and when we have that discussion, he can bring that report up and say, I've found another report that I would recommend.
Well, and as Colin pointed out, I mean, a filter marsh might make sense to talk about for water quality purposes, so.
There's loads of information on the internet about them, you know.
Well, and ours, the 10-mile
Yeah.
canal filter
Yeah.
marsh study, or presentation. I mean, I think, going back to my point, if we focus on specific studies, I think we might miss some important information, as opposed to if we focus on a topic,
Yeah.
y'all bring what you want related to that topic,
Right.
then we'll have at it.
Okay.
It just makes more sense to talk about a topic as opposed to a myriad of studies. I mean, we're drinking from a fire hose already.
Drowning is the word.
The only reminder that I would try to leave you with is that for that meeting on the 21st, it would be very helpful if you could take the 3 or 4 weeks that you have in between to take a look at those studies, put your comments down in writing and get them to me prior to the packet going out around the 14th, because then that information can go out to everybody before the meeting and it would be more helpful, if you can.
Okay.
We're not going to try to do that for the 7th, obviously, because that's a little too quick.
But John, could we have a second mailing out, like would be just a few days before that, the meeting itself, and that way we at least all have them?
Fred,
Could look at them.
I can do anything you want to do, but I thought that the protocol we were going to try to adhere to was packets a week before, so people had a time to read them.
Yeah, and
I'll send it to you up until Monday afternoon if you want, but I don't know how helpful that is.
No, I was simply proposing for one meeting, the next meeting, that because we've got this reading assignment thrown on us a little, that one maybe we would have, besides the packet going out, maybe even like if the meeting's on Monday, maybe on Friday, the stuff that we've come up with individually could be in, and at least that way everybody would get it, and you'd have a better chance to react to it than just cold at the meeting.
If you
One
want.
time only.
I'm okay with trying that, yeah, for this next one. Yeah, I'm flexible with any of this. I just,
Yeah, I wouldn't do anything Monday morning. I
No,
think
not Monday morning.
If we don't get it by Friday, we don't get it until the
No,
meeting.
that's right.
good, yeah.
Depends
Okay.
what time Friday.
Yeah.
okay, next meeting date, April 7th. Anything else? We're adjourned.
Always clean, people call it Southwest Water Management.
Oh, because it's just South Florida.
That's, yeah. It doesn't make sense, and it's a mistake off.